Chapter 451, The Final Wall 3. What the secretive plotter said felt as hollow as words coming from someone who had lost all meaning in his life. I spoke up as if to rebel against that hollowness. Your life saved someone else. To someone who had lost so much, the truth of saving a kid whom he didn't even know the name of wouldn't be much of a consolation. The boy was someone completely unrelated to him, after all. That boy was not his comrade or his family member. I tried to open my lips several times, yet I still couldn't say anything else. The life I lived was no help whatsoever in the quest to save this guy. The secretive plotter looked at me struggling and spoke. When I first saw you, I believed that I needed to bring you under my wings. Bring me under his wings. For some reason, I recalled the moments I first encountered him. Sponsor selection. Please select your sponsor. The selected backer will become your dependable sponsor. 1. Abyssal Black Flame Dragon. 2. Demon-like Judge of Fire. 3. Secretive Plotter. 4. Prisoner of the Golden Headband. I remembered it. That did happen. The secretive plotter showed up during my first sponsor selection as my third potential choice. He really did try to become my sponsor. After that, I continued to observe this world line. Sometimes I was surprised. I was just as surprised by the fact that I was surprised, because I hadn't been surprised by anything for a long time. I knew that. During this world line story, he watched what we did and sent various indirect messages. If I dug through the indirect message logs, I should be able to read the ones he sent to me. Constellation, secretive plotter, is intrigued by your choice. Constellation, secretive plotter, is impressed by the level of your stupidity. Constellation, secretive plotter, is disappointed by your flippant declaration. Eyes of the constellation, secretive plotter, are sparkling after he heard your plan. Constellation, secretive plotter, is curious about your scheme. Those messages made the first actual face-to-face with him rather awkward for me. I knew now that 666 and other Yu Younghyuks were responsible for those indirect messages, but still. I had to decide whether to continue observing this distorted world or to destroy it. Was that why you sent me to the 1863rd turn? The plotter nodded his head. His choice led to the beginning of this world line. He continued on. It was roughly a similar reason why I gave this turn's Yu Younghyuk the information on the 1863rd turn. I had a need to test you, to find out whether you or this turn's Yu Younghyuk was the more suitable candidate to witness the conclusion. Okay, so your choice was. The secretive plotter didn't reply and simply stared at me before opening his mouth. There is a massive wall at the end of this world. It's the final wall that can only be opened when all the keys have been gathered together. You have acquired answers to all the questions. The 3 divine questions and answers has ended. I realized it then. That reply of his was the answer to my 3 questions. Sparks dancing around the secretive plotter grew more vicious. Certain information would require the consumption of a great deal of probability just by mentioning it. And if the info was related to the end of this world, then it was only obvious that the probability cost would be enormous too. The final wall. That was the conclusion the secretive plotter had encountered in his epilogue. The fragment you possess is the last key that I've been searching for. I got nervous and backed away. As I was in the shape of a Murim dumpling, it was pretty hard to take backward steps, but whatever the case might have been, I simply had to create some distance between us. If the plotter's goal was the 4th wall, in my possession, then he, who was busy clenching and unfurling his fists, came across as rather terrifying for some reason. Other K-Koma Yu Younghyuks were also looking up at the plotter with tense expressions. Far too many things had to be distorted to create this world line. I can't decide whether leaving you alone is the right thing to do or not. The distorted world line, the broken probability. I heard about those 2 things lots of times already. Okay, so what do you want then? I just threw out whatever came to my mind. The important thing was to buy time. I needed to drag this out as long as possible and return to my original body. That was important. I don't really get what you're trying to say here. I don't get all this confusing mumbo-jumbo about the end result devouring the cause and whatnot. However, regardless of what, my comrades and I did our absolute best to come this far. The conclusion is practically around the corner for us. I could almost see it, the conclusion to this previously unwritten story. Seeing the conclusion is not everything. The truly important thing is to witness the correct conclusion. Correct conclusion, deciding that would be. A story with distorted probability will always go on to create a calamity. I became dazed from that declaration, something that only a docubuy would make. That's not like you, with something you haven't even seen yet. It was then an earthquake suddenly erupted out. Something collapsed with a loud thud. The wine glass on the circular table tumbled over. The whole forest was shaking around. What's going on? This was definitely not a natural tremor. The secretive plotter slowly stood up from the throne and walked past me. His empty eyes were now peering deeply at the wide view of the forest. The Engai's forest was enveloped in the violent conflagration. His forest was burning up. Save him, save him, save him, save him, save him, save him. All those trees, so tall that they might pierce the heavens above, were now burning away into ashes. Outer gods hidden within the forest screamed. The hall's temperature rapidly shot up from the incredible power of the flames. This couldn't have been a simple arson. Even I could sense it. Someone possessing incredible status was attacking this place. But who could it be? Something like this was impossible. This was the territory of none other than the secretive plotter. So, who would dare to invade this place then? Could it be one of the large nebulas? Vedas, Olympus, or Asgard? I quickly went through the list of all the constellations related to fire in my head, but I couldn't come up with any modifiers. This incredible flame that burned away the entirety of the expansive forest. Could it be that there was another existence possessing this much power back in the original story? Miking. Escape, 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 escape. Small outer gods quickly gathered around the plotter. Many outer gods had left him by now, but still, there were quite a lot that chose to remain. They were like the citizens crowding around to protect their king, having sensed the imminent fall of their kingdom. The secretive plotter, looking at his subjects, spoke to me. Demon King of Salvation, I too made a mistake like you once before. His voice remained relaxed, even as he faced an urgent situation of his forest burning away. As if he had predicted all of this beforehand. Rather foolishly, I tried to change what had already happened in the past. What are you suddenly on about? Are you talking about the events of the 41st turn? If that was the case, then I too knew what happened. Yu Yonghyuk from the 41st turn made a deal with the devil of the horizon and sent Shin Yu-seung to the 3rd turn. As a consequence, she ended up becoming the 3rd turn's calamity. If the secretive plotter was thinking about that particular calamity, then I wanted to tell him that there was nothing to worry about. Unfortunately, 41 next to me was shaking his head. This isn't from my regression turn. What but then? 41 didn't reply and simply stared at the plotter. My head was in a mess. According to my knowledge, the only regression turn in the ways of survival, where he interfered with the past that had already happened, was the 41st. But now there was another turn besides that one. When was that? Did it happen outside the original story? A sun enveloped in pure flames was rising up high above the wide-open ceiling of the hall. However, this sun belonged to neither Surya nor Apollo, and in the center of this exploding sun, ominous-looking sunspots were growing larger. No constellations that I knew possessed a sun that horrifying. That was the power belonging to an existence I didn't know of. 999th turn. Yu Yonghyuk is sighing in lamentation at the sun. Put 999 turn. Abruptly, I recalled something. You Young-hyuk from the 999th regression turn. I respect the life you led. Excluding me, you were the only one who managed to get near the conclusion. One of them was what the secretive plotter had said, and even if I regress, this world will not vanish, meaning the world will not reset just because I died. And the other one was what Yu Young-hyuk had said. Even if he died, the world would not vanish. Even after he regressed, the world would still remain. What if it wasn't only the secretive plotter who witnessed the conclusion? What if there was another story that didn't get a mention in the original storyline? What if there was another being who, even after Yu Young-hyuk had died, remained in that world and continued on through the scenarios, while fighting over and over again? The sun, now enveloped in jet-black flames, suddenly cracked like an eggshell and blinding rays of light exploded out. What if there was another being who reached the end of the world and witnessed his or her conclusion? The arsonist responsible for burning down the forest showed itself in the center of the light. A silhouette simply too beautiful to label as a mere arsonist wavered about. Another existence possessing power equaling the secretive plotter. Such an existence was spreading out her purest white wings right before my eyes. The plotter looked up at this creature and spoke. The living flame. The living flame, he said. There was such a name among the records written by the recorder of fear. The living flame that rises up from the east. One of the kings that ruled over the outer gods, alongside the secretive plotter. The thing was, I never thought about who the other kings could be, or where they might have come from. What a stupid moron I was. All the outer gods were beings from the discarded regression turns from the ways of survival. Since that was the case, I should have figured it out that their kings would also be other beings from the ways of survival, too. Kugugugugu. It felt as if my hands were trembling like crazy. I didn't want to imagine the cause and effect. No, I didn't want to acknowledge it. Right now, I didn't want to accept that a world as horrifying as this one could actually exist. With his trademark disinterested voice, the plotter addressed me. Now do you understand? This is the consequence of distorting the world line. As his words came to an end, a sword wrapped in the most brilliant, luminous flames began pointing in our direction. It was the sword of an archangel that I was intimately familiar with. Why didn't I know it? Maybe I didn't want to know in the first place. That these flames could be this hot and this merciless. That the flames meant to burn demons could also burn other beings too. The sword flames of retribution, now completely covered in hellfire, was glowing brightly. The owner of the sword was smiling, and with an utterly terrifying expression that I had never witnessed before, she opened her mouth to speak. I've been searching for you for a very long time. Yu Young-hyuk from the 1863rd turn. The eyes of the archangel, who judged everything, now blazed in pitch-black flames. Oh, the outer god who ruined my world. It was Uriel. Episode 85, The Final Wall 3 Fin. Chapter 452, The Final Wall 4. That light in her eyes, that killing intent. They were exactly the same as that of the archangel I knew, yet they were also different. This was Uriel's true appearance, the cold-blooded and cruel judge. She was the being that burned all the enemies caught by the flame of retribution for the sake of righteousness. This Uriel had reached her own conclusion, and Starstream is observing the entrance of the new outer god. Starstream is deciphering whether to allow the target's probability or not. And she came this far to kill the secretive. Oh. Tukings. The entrance of another outer god, possessing a similar level of status, as the secretive plotter caused confusion to spread among the small outer gods. Constellation, Goryeo's first sword, is greatly stunned by the entrance of the new outer god. Constellation, bald general of justice, is watching this battlefield while forgetting to polish his head. Constellation, lily blooming on Aquarius, is opening her eyes wide. It seemed that constellations were just as shocked as me. But broadcasting from this place should have been impossible. Maybe the barrier preventing the broadcast was undone after the forest went up in flames. Bureau is paying attention to the Engai's forest. The flames of retribution moved in Uriel's hands. The blade that melted the entirety of the forest flew in, but the plotter lightly shifted his head out of the way. The weapon missed him by a hair's breadth and instead blew away half of the hall and set it on fire. Outer gods, shocked by the merciless destruction, screamed out loudly. The flames of retribution moved again, this time with enough status to blow the entire hall away. Every hair on my dumpling body rose up. Even Surya back in the original novel's 265th turn was not as powerful as this when he destroyed Earth. Quiet. This time, a humongous meteor was descending from the tip of the flames of retribution. It contained enough power to blow away this forest and then, maybe even erase this entire dimension along the way, too. I dragged out every ounce of power within my soul form. Unfortunately, there was no way I'd properly block such an attack without an incarnation body. Besides, to block an attack like that, you'd need. Great Fable, Pilgrim of the Lonely Apocalypse, has begun its storytelling. In the end, the secretive plotter had to step forward. Pitch-black particles shot out as he swung the heaven-shaking sword vigorously. It was the power of a great fable. The dark status spread out like a huge wall and defended against the meteor's impact. Quia-boom! Violent gusts of wind whipped about near the base of the forest, and the uprooted trees were flung up into the air. Whirlwinds made out of flames were completely annihilating everything in the vicinity. Witnessing a clash of this caliber was indeed an exceedingly rare opportunity. Even the battle between Hades and Poseidon back in Gigantomachia wasn't this hectic. Large nebulas are paying close attention to the battle between these two beings. Tsujachachu. In the center of where the two statuses were colliding, sparks grew fiercer and heavier. The plotter's heaven-shaking sword was trembling. He was being pushed back. It was all due to his status being reduced after fighting me and Yu Yonghyuk. This was the power of Uriel, who witnessed the conclusion. At this rate, both the secretive plotter and I would disappear from the star stream, along with the Engai's forest. Currently, your soul temporarily belongs to the secretive plotter. Time remaining until your soul can return, 20 hours, 31 minutes, 20 seconds. I still had over 20 hours remaining until my soul could return. Simply dragging things out wouldn't help my situation at all, because it didn't look as if the secretive plotter would be able to hold out for too long. Exclusive skill, the fourth wall is activating. I needed to stay calm in moments like this. I decided to get a better understanding of this situation first. Look, man, why is Uriel attacking you? First of all, which world line did that Uriel come from? And why was she attacking the secretive plotter? 999th turn. Yu Yonghyuk is staring at the living flame with a helpless expression. For a moment, I felt the inside of my head blank out. Could it be? It was the regression turn that I liked the most. It was almost the perfect turn with just one blemish to its record, the regression turn that reached the conclusion's doorstep. Uriel began speaking again. Oh, I ask you, the outer god, I hope that you haven't forgotten about the events of the 999th turn. I do remember. That's good. The blade of the enraged Uriel contained the fable she had compiled so far. Great Fable, Flames of Eternity, has begun its storytelling. Her great fable burned fiercely. A story that I had never seen before was unfolding itself. Master, we're almost there. We just have to go a little bit further, you know. That was Yi Jaihai's voice. Words began telling their story. Yonghyuk SSI, just hold on for a little longer. We're almost there. 999th turns Yu Yonghyuk, having lost his left arm, right leg, and both of his eyes, was there. This Yu Yonghyuk only lived for the sake of his companions. His world was dyed in darkness, but one voice entered it like a ray of light. Conquering King, you must stay with us. That's right. Uriel was also accompanying them in the 999th turn. She was Yu Jung-hyuk's comrade. For the sake of a man who risked his everything to fight, the Archangel willingly became his ally. The conclusion to this world is just around the corner. I recalled that the 999th turn was something of a miracle. Even if their luck was good, to think that he managed to almost reach the conclusion during only his 999th turn. But the truth was, it wasn't all due purely to luck. Yu Jung-hyuk of the 999th turn made a deal with an outer god. The reason why I didn't go for the absolute throne and tried not to do the otherworld pledge, if at all possible, was because I knew how the 999th turn had ended. An unknown godly being, whose name was just as mysterious, the otherworld pledge, made with that godly being eventually took Yu Jung-hyuk's life. The original novel didn't specify who that outer god was, but it was a creature that spent its own probability to grant the 999th turn's Yu Jung-hyuk incredible power and lucky opportunities. Chills ran down my neck. Demon King of Salvation, I too made a mistake like you once before. Rather foolishly, I tried to change what had already happened in the past. That outer god was none other than the secretive plotter. Now, do you understand? This is the consequence of distorting the world line. He had entered the past world line belonging to the original storyline and tried to distort the probability. And the result of that was Uriel, who witnessed the conclusion of the 999th regression turn, showing up here. I shall avenge my world line in this place. She was here to avenge her comrades' grudges against the outer god from then. Just like how you stole away all that's precious to me, I shall do the same to you. Her boundless and justified wrath filled her true voice. I felt all my strength abandoning me. I could understand where Uriel was coming from. I too clearly remembered the moment that the 999th turn's Yu Jung-hyuk died. Authornim, this can't be the end, can it? But isn't Jung-hyuk just too pitiful to end up like this? 999th turns Yu Jung-hyuk sacrificed his life to guide his comrades towards the conclusion. But his cost was to never see the conclusion of the world himself. It was all because of the damn otherworld pledge. The probability flooding in cut his life off before the end. Can't he be revived somehow, like the underworld or through reincarnation? I mean, there are lots of different ways, right? Besides, just what was that outer god anyway? I resented the author and resented that outer god. And I despaired while looking at the dying Yu Jung-hyuk with only a little bit left until the conclusion. The mental shock was so strong that I even ended up hesitating whether to read the next day's chapter or not. Now I was curious. Why did the secretive plotter do something like that back in the 999th turn? I wanted to change it. What? I wanted to see a proper conclusion, even if that happened in a different world line. The plotter once told me this, that I had to be careful with the probability, that I needed to create the right conclusion. But even someone saying stuff like that had actually wished to change his past. Just like how I wished to change this regression turn, he too had felt the same way once. Regardless of whether the end result devoured the cause or not. Even if the star stream's probability crumbled. He wanted to reach the proper conclusion at least once. He wished to see himself reaching the conclusion together with his comrades. However, it didn't work out that way. I'm sure you find me quite pathetic, that I made the same sort of mistake as you. The plotter's status was crumbling down. His body was getting even smaller. All Yu Jung-hyuk sleeping within him were now screaming, and as if to speak up for those screams. I wanted to find the one responsible for creating this tragedy, said the plotter. The one who created this universe. The one that made me regress and made me repeat the scenarios. My goal is to kill the one beyond the wall. That was his true goal. Stopping the regressions, saving the outer gods, opening up the final wall. All of these were centered around his main goal. He waved his hand and my soul left the Murim dumpling. I got tense. I couldn't tell what he was thinking of. I quickly spoke to him. The current, you can't stop that, Uriel. However, if my companions and I help out. The plotter shifted his gaze over to me. Do you understand what you're saying right now? I do. I was improvising on the fly, but I did genuinely feel that way. Since I heard his true end goal, it was time for me to make my reply. From the get-go, the world that peeps on and greedily devours someone else's life is wrong. The star stream was wrong. Yu Young-hyuk's regressions were wrong, and the stories the scenarios created were unfair. That's why I won't sit still. I'll witness the conclusion. You say I shouldn't, but I'll see it regardless. I'll definitely jump over that wall you failed to cross along with my companions, and as for the being beyond it. The plotter was now waiting for me to finish my words. I'll kill that guy. I'll end your most ancient dream. Uriel's status was growing even stronger. The expansive hall began crumbling down. Like a world breaking apart, the Engai's forest was disappearing. Outer gods moved closer to the secretive plotter, perhaps sensing that the end was nigh. Meanwhile, he opened his mouth. You said that you survived because of my story. In that case, time to pay your debt. Just before I could ask him for clarification, Yu Young-hyuk's fables flooded out from him. Great fable, pilgrim of the lonely apocalypse, is howling out. Great fable, hellscape of eternity, has begun its storytelling. The plotter's memories were now permeating into me, memories that I didn't know. The information he gained, after going through the 1863rd turn, was now flooding into me. A portal was generated behind me, one created by the power of an outer god. It began to gradually suck me in. Hey, hang on a minute. What are you trying to? I'm not trying to leave this world's conclusion in your hands. At that moment, he no longer looked like the secretive plotter. I shall regress. Right now he was Yu Young-hyuk. I shall live through the 1864th turn, and then the 1865th. I'll survive that turn, witness the conclusion, and become the outer god once more, and... Eventually, the hall collapsed. Everything was melting away under the bright light. Uriel's sword sliced through the thick history that totaled 1863rd regression turns and flew towards the secretive plotter. To see the conclusion of this world line, I shall return. His body was defenselessly pierced through, and I had to watch that, unable to do anything. He was cut down by the flames of retribution, and his fable was scattering away. Constellation, secretive plotter is activating stigma, regression LV. Even though he had become the outer god, he was still a regressor. The one thing he hadn't done in a long time, regressing, would start again. He'd wake up in the 1864th turn subway once more, and go on to create yet another horrifying world line. Kim Dokya thought to himself, I can't let that be. Before I could unleash the fables permeating in my soul form, though, Uriel made her move first. You shall not escape to the next turn. Her white hands grabbed the plotter's neck. Black light pouring out from her hand stopped the fable's disintegration. The light spread out gradually and encased his entire body. Soon, the light formed a shape of small sphere. I recognized what that was. That was the sealing sphere, used back in the 1863rd turn to seal away the apocalypse dragon. Why didn't I think of it before? Uriel was now an outer god too, so she should obviously be aware of the plotter's, or Yu Young-hyuk's, ability by now. She should know that he'd continue regressing and would never truly die. Her hand tightened further and further. The jet-black sealing sphere soon emitted pale light. I shall seal you away for eternity. Episode 85, Final Wall 4, Finn. Chapter 453, Episode 85, The Final Wall 5. The sealing technique that utilized the sealing sphere of the apocalypse dragon. This was a similar plan to what the 1863rd turn's Han Soo-young had devised. It'll stop the time of this place, and Earth will be sealed along with the apocalypse dragon, frozen forever in the 95th scenario. And that is the way you can kill Yu Young-hyuk. It was the method of sealing Yu Yonghyuk inside the perpetuity of time and stopping his regressions. I reflexively looked at the secretive plotter. I wanted to tell him that now would be a good time to run. Even if it was him, he'd not be able to escape from being sealed in that thing. However, why are you smiling? Constellation, secretive plotter, is looking at his own black. He was strong enough to survive 1863 lifetimes, but because of that, he was also exhausted enough to crumble at any given moment. The eternal slumber. In a certain way, that was what he had been wishing for his entire life. Hang on, Uriel, please stop. My words prompted Uriel to look in my direction for the first time. She seemed to be surprised by the fact that an insignificant being had called out her true name and opened her mouth to speak. Who is this soul form? Is it an existence from this world line? I wasn't sure what to say here. Before I could, though, the secretive plotter seized the initiative first. He's a nobody. Let him go. For a moment there, he was looking straight at me. Quite unlike his usual self, his eyes were displaying clear emotions. He genuinely wished for me to make my escape from here. However, the situation remained grim. The portal was being shut forcibly by Uriel. She alternated her gaze filled with the secretive plotter and me, her eyes remaining unreadable, before opening her mouth again. Even after you ruined your own turn and messed up someone else's world line, you still have something you wish to protect. Her power extended out in an instant and captured me. This might be the worst possible situation. Very well, I shall seal this bastard away with you. Enjoy your eternal slumber alongside your comrade then. Hang on a minute. Shouldn't you be listening to my side of the story too? Uriel glared at me as if I was speaking of nonsense. I didn't back down and shouted back. I do understand where you are coming from. I know how wronged you feel after your world line got distorted, and I get how angry you are. However, this is wrong. This isn't your world line. What you're trying to do is exactly the same as the one you hate, the secretive plotter. As I urgently made my case, I began sensing this stinging pain on my forehead. My head, with no actual physical form, was hurting right now. The sensation from the constrictive headband was getting stronger. Why don't we stop this? I mean, it's already not enough to pool our strengths together to destroy the star stream, so why should we fight each other like this? Don't you know who the real enemy is? Don't you know where the true cause of all this tragedy? You want to destroy the star stream. Why do you wish to do something like that? Now that was an unexpected question. That's because the world of the star stream is. If the star stream disappears, the whole universe will fall into chaos. At that moment, a corner of my chest grew icy cold. I secretly believed that all my companions wished to witness the same conclusion as each other. However, what if that wasn't the case? After Yu Yonghyuk's death, the 999th turn's companions would have carried on to reach the final scenario and cleared it. What was the end of the world they had reached after all of that? Such a world line must never be created. That is the way of evil. Along with her declaration, her status began to tighten around me. In that case, it can't be helped. We can only fight then. Fight, a creature without an incarnation body will. I'm not the one who will fight you. I looked up at the sky and smirked back at her. My comrades will. Powerful sparks exploded in front of my eyes. My head got squeezed tightly as if it'd shatter into pieces, and my vision fell apart. Something was getting closer. Prajna Dakya, don't try, stay put sutra. Here they come. But, accompanied by Biyu's cry, a new portal opened up in the midair. Almost right away, the black flame dragon's pitch-black breath poured out. Uriel quickly discarded me and retreated away from that powerful rush of hot flames. At the same time, someone snatched away my soul form and flew up. Every freaking where you go, seriously, man. And why do you look like this now? It was Han Soo-young. I guess only the constrictive headband wasn't enough. And then Yu Sang-ah. She was carrying my incarnation body on her back, currently shackled by the headband. She seemed to have correctly guessed what my current condition was. Currently, the binding force of the existence pledge is in a weakened state. I didn't hesitate and jumped back into my body. My vision crumbled again for a bit, and the sensations from my limbs returned. Although my incarnation body was not okay, it was still better than not having one. I saw Uriel activating Helfer through my blurry vision. Han Soo-young next to me had her eyes open up wide. Hey, what the heck is this? No time to explain. We've got to get out of here pronto. Both Han Soo-young and Sakyamuni's successor, Yu Sang-ah, were powerful beings. Unfortunately, our enemy this time was simply too strong, with only these two. Quiet. As if waiting for that moment, Helfer's flames pounced on my companions. Got 'em it. The waves of incredible heat that couldn't be avoided no matter where you escaped to. Its status was so humongous that Han Soo-young's black flame alone wasn't enough to fight back. It was then a powerful burst of reddish flames exploded from the same portal Han Soo-young had used. It had the exact same coloring as our enemy's flames. Two powerful sources of heat clashed and generated a violent storm of fire. What the black square CK? Which mother black square seeker is it? A certain someone coughed her lungs out and appeared from thick, choking flames. An archangel waved away the smoke with one hand and revealed herself. Wearing a black dress and kitted out in a golden anklet, an archangel I was intimately familiar with was standing there, soot on her cheeks and all. NG, which son of a black square dares to hurt my Kim Dok? Uriel shifted her gaze beyond the Helfer, and soon afterwards her expression became dazed. Then her jaw slackened as she muttered out, I am the black square. I didn't expect her to be a part of the rescue team. The situation had gotten more complicated this way. Of all things, the two Uriels had to run into each other here. And you are. It seemed that the outer god Uriel was just as stunned by this. I see, you are this world line. The moment these two Uriels looked at each other, violent sparks exploded in the air. It was rather obvious that our side was still in an overwhelmingly disadvantageous position. Our Uriel was strong, sure, but that Uriel was someone who had witnessed the end of a world line. If we don't find an opening quickly and escape, then... Sujajajut. An unexpected event happened next. Starstream is intrigued by the encounter of these two beings. Disconnected film theory is activating. When two fables met and intertwined with each other in the air, a gigantic backflow of memories occurred. Get up, Yu Young-hyuk, hurry. Memories from the 999th regression turn were coming through. Uriel's eyes opened wider at this sudden intrusion of foreign memories. What's this? What's going on? Waves of unfamiliar memories were flooding us. Uriel from the 999th turn was fighting with her back pressed against Yu Young-hyuk's. Now, that was a fine display of what being comrade in arms looked like. Our Uriel couldn't get a hold of herself from the rush of memories flooding in and staggered unsteadily. That damn theory, again it's. Before I could complete my train of thought, though, I realized that the situation wasn't as bad as I expected. Because the exchange of fables via that theory went both ways. The evidence of that was the 999th turn's Uriel, who not only staggered about, but she actually even plopped down on the ground. Kim Dok-ya, over here, sit next to me. Definitely. 9158 forever. One's ID shouldn't be too eye-catching, so, right, let me go with Yuri 9158. All right, it's not so obvious now. Squid Kim Dok-ya's leg will be given away as a special bonus. And there were a few fables that might shock their viewers mixed in among them, too. This, what is? 999th turn. Uriel was frowning deeply as if she was in pain. Han Soo-young didn't miss that opening and, while supporting our Uriel, shouted out, I don't know what's going on here, but this is good. Let's bounce out of here. I mean, she looks seriously strong even at a glance, right? Her judgment was definitely correct. However, she forgot one small detail. Hang on, let's take him with us too. I pointed at the secretive plotter sagging on the ground. Perhaps the memories of this world line proved to be too shocking for her. The ceiling sphere Uriel had been constructing had become quite badly tattered. Han Suyong spoke in pure disbelief. "Are you stupid? Why should we take him with us? We need to bring him with us. Only then will we reach the correct conclusion." "What bullshit are you?" Indeed, it was a bullshit-like utterance. I was being obstinate and my actions didn't make much sense. Even then, I continued to speak my piece. "That guy must not die here. He too has the right to see the conclusion." All the worlds were simply blamming Yu Young-hyuk. Uriel from the 999th turn, everyone from that world line, too, as the consequence of spending his entire life to reach his own conclusion. He had to become the enemy of every world line. Out of the 1863 regression turns, was there any turn where he got to be happy, at least once? When I regained my wits, I was already sprinting forward. 999th turn Uriel was slowly regaining her own wits too, and I saw her trying to reignite the hellfire. Han Suyong shouted out, "You crazy fool, we don't have the time." I gave it my all to activate the way of the wind. Flames from hellfire began flooding in once more. These dancing flames in the air somehow looked like ancient letters to me. "Author Nim, wouldn't it be okay just one time?" I couldn't quite remember how old this memory was. I mean, there are so many regression turns, so just once would. Did I really say something like that? My memories weren't clear enough. However, just like back then, when all I could do was to type on the keyboard and press the space bar, I could only run forward like crazy right in this moment. Isn't it okay for him to be happy? Maybe that was me whining to a god responsible for creating this world. "It seems that you weren't happy with what I have written." Then the god replied, "In that case, what kind of a conclusion would you like to see, Doc Yan-im? Which conclusion would be a happy ending for the protagonist?" What did I say back then? I tried but couldn't remember at all, and even now I couldn't be sure of what the right answer was. I didn't have the right to speak about someone else's happiness after all. However, even if it was someone like me who had no right, there was this one thing I still understood. This is not a happy ending. The secretive plotter's body was getting sucked into the encroaching heat from the hellfire. With no time to spare, I managed to grab hold of his wrist and then began running in the opposite direction. Han Suyong's complexion grew pale and she hurriedly summoned the X-grade Ferrarghini. Meanwhile, Yu Sang-ah shouted out, "Dakya SSI, faster!" "You can't!" I evaded the rushing flames and placed the secretive plotter on my back. The bottom of my feet was growing insanely hot now. I ran with all my might to escape from that crazy heat. "Arg, screw this shit. I don't care anymore. Hurry up and get in." Han Suyong reached out to me, and I barely managed to jump inside the vehicle. I saw Uriel in the backseat, shivering away. Almost at the same time, a tsunami wave of reddish flames pounced on us. "Stop!" I inwardly prayed towards the mass production type maker. I prayed that this vehicle's performance was mass production in the slightest. Constellation, mass production type maker, is grinning brightly. With an explosive turn of speed, the X-grade Ferrarghini accelerated forward. At the same time, BU opened a portal, and we jumped into this dimensional passageway right away. The horrifying howl made by 999th turn, Uriel chased us from behind. I was scared that she was actually chasing us down. Even if we managed to escape back to Earth unscathed like this, if that Uriel managed to follow us and went on a rampage. Su-cha-cha-cha-cha. The 999th turn Uriel stopped giving chase as the sparks crazily whipped about, while shooting me a terrifying glare, no less. Starstream is carefully observing the living flame. It seemed that she couldn't use this portal. A powerful storm of probabilities aftermath was holding her back, but that made sense. A being possessing such a might actually enjoyed less freedom in the star stream, after all. However, there was this one thing that kept nagging me. If she was that restrained, how could she appear in the Engai's forest with such good timing? It was as if someone had instigated this whole thing. Instigating it. Great Dakibai, Hyaju, is keeping a close eye on your whereabouts. At that moment, a faint little theory entered my head. What if that Uriel's appearance was not a coincidence? Great Dakibai, Hyach, is keeping a close eye on your whereabouts. Great Dakibai, Baram, is keeping a close eye on your whereabouts. What if someone within the star stream wanted it to happen and they summoned her to this world line? There was almost no organization in this world capable of moving that much probability. Bureau is keeping a close eye on your whereabouts. The Engai's forest could be seen through the vehicle's windows. Outer gods that came from the doomed world lines were now being extinguished. Citizens of a small kingdom were saying their goodbyes to their king. Survive, 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 survive. There was more than one outer god king. Just like how the 999th turns Uriel had shown up here, other kings would undoubtedly appear too. Surely, the ones trying to interfere with the conclusion I wanted to see would call them to this world. Starstream is looking at you. I raised my head to find the world that I need to fight looking at me. This would be a very tough and arduous fight. Han Suyong looked at me through the rearview mirror and grumbled about something. Yu Sangos, sitting in the front passenger's seat, was looking at me. I quietly nodded my head and gazed at the unconscious, secretive plotter and the still-dazed Uriel. Quite likely, no one in this universe would stand on our side. I saw the portal's exit in the distance. Your choice has left a profound impact on the black. Your black square is leaning towards eternity. And so, the time to prepare for the final pages of the world had arrived. Episode 85, The Final Wall 5 Fin. Chapter 454, The Square Circle 1. While driving down the dimensional passageway, neither Han Suyong nor Yu Sangos said much. Thanks to that, though, I was able to organize my thoughts while gazing outside the window on what I need to do in the future and the things I'd like to do. Next to me, Uriel finally stopped muttering something with a serious face, only to fall into a snore-filled slumber. Meanwhile, the secretive plotter was half leaning against her, also unconscious. It kind of felt weird seeing two of the oldest viewers in my channel sleeping so defenselessly like that. Han Suyong, checking me out through the rearview mirror, suddenly spoke up. "What are you grinning like that for? You should be getting ready to give us a proper explanation once we get back." Explanation, was it? It was pretty clear what I needed to explain to them, of course. You only have one chance. I found Yu Sangos' bright smile rather terrifying. We've arrived. Not too long after that, the Ferrarghini came to a stop. We were back in Seoul. A short while later, I was sitting in front of my companions. The faces that I missed so much, the ones I wanted to see, had gathered in one place. The Kim Dokya company that experienced the scenarios together with me, including Yi Gil-yong, Shin Yuseung, Jiang Hui-won, and Yi Jai-hai, and Yi Xiao-hwa and Gong Pil-du, who guarded Seoul while I wasn't here. Finally, I could see my mother and the wanderers in the living room a bit further away. I studied the faces of all my companions and lowered my head 90 degrees before opening my mouth. I'm sorry. About what? All the things I've done. I'm really sorry. Well, sure. What's this? Weren't they furious at me? I wasn't sure what's going on here, but, well, I thought this was for the best. I had so many things to explain after all. I'd like to explain a few things, starting from. First of all, tell us whose child that is. Gong Pil-du threw out that question first. I chased after his gaze and saw the secretive plotter floating inside a clear sphere near me. Currently, this individual's fable is unstable. Seeing that he still failed to regain his consciousness yet, it seemed that a serious problem had occurred after he used up far too much probability. Meaning, it was impossible for him to clarify the situation by himself. Meanwhile, rage began filling up Gong Pil-du's eyes when I didn't answer back. You said that you'd get rid of the scenarios, so I protected Seoul for you, yet you dare to show yourself here with your child instead. The grief of a man who spent his entire life as a jirogi, dad, could be felt in that voice. I see that you're under some sort of a misunderstanding, but—" "Whose is it?" Gong Pildu glanced at Yu Sang-ah with somewhat fearful eyes. "Could it be?" He met her smiling eyes and shook his head. "Right, there's no way. That means it's with her then." "You want to die?" Han Suyong growled angrily, prompting him to flinch grandly. I didn't miss that opening and quickly jumped in. "Excuse me, isn't it a bit too much thinking that he's someone's kid? Besides, just where does he look like a newborn to you? Han Myung-o's kid grew up in the blink of an eye, didn't she?" Those words caused Han Myung-o's complexion to pale. That kind of makes me uncomfortable. What bugs me more than that is the kid's face. It's exactly the same as that jerk-off's. Gong Pildu shifted his gaze over to the corner of the living room while saying that. That's where the cross-legged Yu Young-hyuk and his glaring eyes were at, his entire body tightly wrapped in bandages. His trademark scary glare was locked on me. "Kim Dak-ya, what is the meaning of this?" I could only sigh grandly. It's only natural that he looks exactly the same as that jerk-off, because this kid is that jerk-off, you see. Silence descended on the living room in an instant. Gong Pildu was looking at me, his eyes asking what kind of rubbish I was spewing out this time. It seemed that my tale was going to get a bit lengthier than initially planned. There are several Yu Young-hyuks in this world. I guess I should start my explanation from there. I started my in-depth explanation from the end of the Great War of Saints and Demons. From when I summoned the outer god that destroyed the demon world, the nameless mist, to stop the apocalypse dragon. Gong Pildu, are you bloody insane? And then encountering the secretive plotter and him kidnapping me. YCLHWA, oh my goodness. Then finding out that the plotter was none other than Yu Young-hyuk, who had lived through 1863 regression turns. Jang Ha-yong, what the heck are you talking about? Forming a contract with him that also contained the other world pledge. Shin Yu-seung, I knew something like that would happen, Ajasi. Entering the great fabled journey to the west without informing my companions. Yijai-hai, Ajasi, you're definitely not cut out to be an actor, you know. The battle between two Yu Young-hyuks, one from 1863rd turn and the other from 999th turn. Jiang Hui-won, just how many Yu Young-hyuks are out there? Yu Young-hyuk of this world line, who thought that he was in the third turn, realizing that it's actually the 1864th. Han Myung-o, could it be that you yourself can't explain this and are just coming up with random stuff? Barely managing to clear the journey to the west with my companion's help, but then getting kidnapped by the secretive plotter again. Yu Sang-ah, wordlessly sighing. And finally, the event of encountering the 999th turn, Uriel in that place, who had become an outer god herself. When I got that far, even I began wondering what the hell I was talking about. I raised my head to discover that my companions were carrying roughly the similar expressions. The first one to react was Han Myung-o. So that's what happened. I think I understand everything. But that's plainly not possible. Everyone was now looking at him. So Han Myung-o added one more thing. It seems to me that you actually enjoy dying or getting kidnapped. Excuse me, I guess it's not just me who don't get it right. Just what the heck are you talking about here? There are 3 of my masters running around out there. And what's up with this 1864th turn and all? Perhaps it was natural that they didn't understand. From the get-go, the fact that the 1863rd turn had split into 2 was causing the complications. Yu Young-hyuk, who lived through the original 1863rd turn, went on to become the secretive plotter. Meanwhile, Yu Young-hyuk that lived through the altered 1863rd turn regressed once more and became the dude that we all knew. Since I read The Ways of Survival, I could understand it fine, but it was natural that my companions would find this all rather mystifying. Jiang Hui-won, massaging her head, asked me then, "Okay, so what are you saying? Is our Young-hyuk SSI the third turn or the 1864th? That prompted Yu Young-hyuk, sitting on the corner of the bed, to reply curtly, "I don't know." Eh, I can't remember. I activated the character list and confirmed Yu Young-hyuk's information. Character summarized list. Character Yu Young-hyuk. Exclusive attribute, regressor third turn, myth. Surprisingly, his attribute had reverted back to third turn. My memories returned only during the time when I was borrowing Kim Dakya's fable for a little while. It was similar to watching someone else's history. I had no idea it was like that. Yu Young-hyuk continued on. This is what I think. This is originally the third turn, and I am definitely the third turn Yu Young-hyuk. Except that, during a certain point during the world line, the memories from when I was living in the 1864th turn have covered up mine temporarily. YCLHWA, listening in, joined the conversation. But that doesn't make any sense. You're saying that the third turn has influenced the 1863rd turn, and in turn, the 1863rd has influenced the third. That's logically impossible. Logically, no. Eventually, Han Soo-young stepped in too. It can only be valid in the form of written words. What I'm saying is that such a thing is only possible because this world used to be a novel originally. She then shifted her gaze over to the secretive plotter, surrounded by the transparent sphere. It's the same thing as the square circle, or the triangle with the total of their interior angles coming at 720 degrees. YCLHWA tilted her head and asked her, "But something like that can't exist, right?" It's more correct to say that you can't even imagine it, actually. However, as texts, as paragraphs, they certainly can exist. What's happening right now is just like that. To us, it might be a time paradox, but as texts of a novel, it's completely possible, you know. I mean, you can just say there it is, so deal with it. It's not the issue with understanding it, but rather accepting it. So let's look at it in a simpler way. We're currently stuck inside a crap novel. Since the original was crap, this is the end result. I wanted to say something as a rebuttal, but since she spoke of truth, I couldn't think of anything. If I was this novel's writer, I'd have stopped doing the world line distortion thing at once or twice. Readers seriously don't like this sort of complicated stories, you know. Even the constellations probably can't figure out what's going on here. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, says that his incarnation is truly a smart cookie. A world with broken probability will collapse by itself. I know of quite a few stories that ended in that manner, worlds that even their authors gave up on. Han Soo-young was an author herself, so she could say these words. She might have abandoned such worlds in the past, and she might be regretting it till this day. When I thought about that, something felt off to me. The world created by the author of The Ways of Survival, TLS 123, had become a reality. In that case, what kind of a conclusion would you like to see, Doc Yan-im? Which conclusion would be a happy ending for the protagonist? Could it be that the author couldn't finish his story and was leaving it up to us? Jiang Huiwen scratched her cheek and asked, "Okay, so what's your conclusion, Han Soo-young? We gotta fight those bastards that shoved us into this stupid world, whether it's the author, the outer gods, or even the Dakibus. The same as it has always been, then. Doesn't matter what happened in the original, you can chuck that crap to the dogs for all I care. We have to see our own conclusion anyway. We simply can't remain stuck in the damn shithole scenarios forever." She was right about everything. Whether it was the outer god king or the bureau, it didn't matter. Every star and nebula Kim Dakya Company is radiating light. No matter who our enemy was, we still had only one choice to make. We fight, win, and reach our answers in our own way. Dakya SSI. Before I realized it, my companions were looking at me. They seemed to be waiting for me to say something. Their expressions were asking me about what we need to do moving on, and what we need to make preparations for. Of course, I had been thinking about those as well. However, it wasn't that easy for me to say the first words. Maybe it was because I felt nervous, knowing that the end was around the corner. It was fear that, although we reached this far with so much hardship, one wrong judgment from me and everything could go down the crapper, just like that. It was also a burden of knowing that I now had to walk on the path not seen in the original novel. My lips bobbed up and down several times, and eventually I managed to eke out a word. So, that'll be enough for today. Yu Sang-ah stepped in to stop me. Let us rest for today and carry on tomorrow. Everyone, we've returned from a tough scenario only just now anyway. I stayed up that night and made plans. I was almost lured by the temptation to read the final revised version of The Ways of Survival several times, but in the end, I didn't. I wasn't sure why not, but then again I did have this hunch. This gut feeling that, the moment I read the novel, I'd not be able to escape from its shackles. I fell into a slumber so deep that I couldn't even remember when I succumbed to it. The last bits of the memories were a blur. I might have dozed off while reading a book, and I thought I drank a cup of warm tea that Yi Gil-yong had brought in. In any case, it was a rather sweet sleep. And I thought I had a happy dream too. The dream was about the chat I had with Yu Sang-ah some time ago. Set in a world where all the scenarios had come to an end, my companions were busy talking about their daily lives. It was really peaceful. It was so peaceful, in fact, that it didn't feel like real peace to me. And when I saw the bright smiles on Shin Yu-seung and Yi Gil-yong's faces, somewhat mysteriously I realized the truth. This is a dream, isn't it? I bit down hard on my lip, and as if an earthquake had erupted out, the view of my dream rocked about. Still in the haziness of my consciousness, I slowly opened my eyes and tried to sit up. What's this? My body didn't want to move. Also, the faint earthquake I felt inside the dream continued on, too. I managed to force my eyes open, and the surroundings revealed itself under the dim darkness. What greeted me was the sensation of plush leather enveloping my back and the head. Hey, Kim Dokya's trying to wake up. Put him to sleep again. I felt someone smacking me in the head, and my consciousness dimmed again. And as I faded out, I heard a mischievous voice talking to me. This is the workers' revolt, you dumbass. And when I opened my eyes again, I was inside an unfamiliar mountainside. Episode 86, The Square Circle 1 Fin. Chapter 455, Episode 86, The Square Circle 2. I began thinking about how this event came to be. 1. I was bound tightly. 2. I was thrown inside an unfamiliar mountainside. No matter how hard I analyzed it, the end result always came back to kidnapping. But who would dare to infiltrate the Kim Dokya company and kidnap me? Which could only mean. Is. Dokya Lantai. Odd. Faint voices could be heard coming from somewhere. I grunted and struggled to free myself, and then staggered towards where those voices were coming from. I brushed past the thickets and around 30 seconds later, ran into a fairly wide campsite manned by my companions. Ah, so he came on his own volition then. Han Soo-young snickered and waved her hand towards me. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen an industrial strike action before? Hang on a minute this. What a nice breeze. Dokya SSI, why don't you come and lie down here? Jiang Hui-won was lying spread-eagled on the ground looking up at the sky right next to Han Soo-young. She moved her arms as if they were her wings, causing the fragrant green blades of grass to fall and get back up again and again. Han Soo-young then began muttering in a reverential voice. Grass lies down. Faster than wind it lies down. Oh. Jiang Hui-won too lies down. Faster than wind she lies down, and before the gust comes she stands up first. Not bad. While looking at this sudden breakout of a poetry reading competition, as well as Jiang Hui-won providing timely support fire, I asked them in a dazed voice. Just what is going on? This is the workers' revolution, dumbass. Okay, you've been harping on about a revolution and whatnot for a while now, but... Arg, I just want to take a damn break. Do I need to spell it out for you? I frowned after she berated me. Taking a break? What are you talking about? Don't you know what era we're in right now? What era are we in then? I wasn't sure what to say when she retorted back like that. What did she mean by what era we were in? Currently, the Nebula Kim Dokya Company, possesses the qualification to enter the final scenario. Remaining time to enter the scenario is 28 days, 12 hours, 15 minutes and 7 seconds. I calmly replied to ensure that I wouldn't get sucked into her pace. We don't have the time for this. The final scenario is literally just around the corner. And that's why we need to take a breather now. If not, when can we be able to like this? Said Han Soo-young while sighing out grandly. Look around you. Don't spend your day buried in your smartphone, all right? You still want to work even after coming to a place like this. After hearing her, I began scanning the surrounding terrain for the first time. Indeed, we were in a fertile green forest. I wasn't sure which mountain it was, Jirisan, Seoraksan, or Halasan. In any case, it was a really beautiful mountain, all right. The sunlight wasn't too strong, while the wind blowing felt cool to the skin. It was perfect weather for camping, in other words. I hesitated somewhat before speaking up. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take a break, but, it's good to rest, but what I'm saying is that we should finish what we need to do first. Right now we're... Holy cow, Dakya Sasai, you're really K-Kondi-minded, aren't you? Is every company representative out there like you? Said Jiang Huiwan while lightly tapping my shin. Representative Nim, when you're taking a break, you're supposed to just do it. My head became complicated. Han Soo-young glared at me when I didn't say a thing and addressed me in a sour tone of voice. Sure, you're also right. Everyone shouldn't be resting at the same time, so at least one person should be in a scenario. Why don't you go ahead? What? I'm saying, why don't you do the scenario that you love so much? After hearing her, my gaze abruptly shifted up to the air to discover an actual scenario window floating up there. Sub-scenario, workers' off day has been generated. I had never even heard of such a scenario before, so I quickly accessed the scenario window. Sub-scenario, workers' off day. Type sub. Difficulty. Clear condition. You're the head representative of the Nebula Kim Dakya Company. Due to your exploitation and harsh treatment, employees of Kim Dakya Company are currently in a very fatigued state. They are greatly dissatisfied with you, the head of the Nebula, and are in the middle of a strike. As their boss, you must listen to their complaints and appease them. In consideration of your weak communication skill, the total goal for complaint resolution will be set at 5 people. Time limit 12 hours. Reward, trust from Kim Dakya Company's employees. Failure, death. Death? What the hell? What kind of a scenario is this? I looked up at the sky, and Bu went bald up there. Han Soo-young grumbled, directly aimed at me. Seriously, man, this guy needs to be told through a scenario just to understand it. While feeling anxious, I looked around my surroundings. My companions seemed to be enjoying themselves. Han Soo-young was busy reciting parody poems, while Jiang Huiwan had fallen asleep among the grass. Ye Gil-yong and Shin Yu-seung were butting heads and growling at each other. Hey Shin Yu-seung, let's make a bet. Let's see who can catch the bigger dinner today. What are we betting on? The loser grants the winner one wish, okay. Call. The kids quickly sprinted towards the forest and Yu Sang-ah called out to them, be careful. There was a small valley with a flowing stream next to the campsite. Gong Pil-du sat on the fishing chair he brought along, and while looking at his lure in the water, he yawned out relaxedly. Han Myung-oh sitting next to him was muttering about this and that. If only we were out by the ocean, I'd have caught a sea bream this big. I heard the refreshing sounds of water flowing in the valley as well as mountain birds chirping away. It felt as if the calming greenery of the overgrown mountainside was slowly collapsing on myself. It was as if I was still dreaming. This sort of affectionate behavior felt uncomfortable to me, like some kind of ill-fitting clothes. Was it okay to be like this? Was it okay to experience moments like this already? I searched for Yu Young-hyuk. Indeed, we shouldn't be like this. If it was him, he should agree with me. He must be standing around somewhere while glaring at the group. Along with that scary light in his eyes, he'd start lecturing everyone, beginning with "you fools." I quickly located him. I was about to raise my hand and call out to him, but then stopped after realizing something was off there too. Kaiyik. He was actually cooking over there. Standing before a large grill, his hands were moving around in a showy fashion to grill some meat. Vegetables were sizzling and shuddering inside the frying pan. The breaking the sky swordsmanship, capable of destroying the heavens, was now used to chop vegetables and meat. I even forgot to call out to him, and stared at that spectacle in a pure daze. Just what in freaking hell was going on here? In the next second, his eyes shifted over in my direction. He then silently conveyed his words with that trademark scary glare of his. I didn't need to resort to the omniscient reader's viewpoint to tell what those eyes were saying. It was most definitely, "You can look all day long, but you aren't getting any of this food." That's what those eyes probably meant to say. His sides were occupied by both Yu Mia and Yi Jai, their eyes filled with deep interest and anticipation. Now, Yu Mia opened her mouth, and Yu Yonghyuk moved his chopsticks with an emotionless face. He was like a mother bird picking up a piece of meat to place it in her mouth. She grinned brightly. "It's really tasty." Yijai, blankly standing around, opened her mouth too. He studied her for a moment or two before placing more meat inside Yu Mia's mouth instead. That carried on for 4, maybe 5 more times, and eventually Yijai shut her mouth. "Master, you're too heartless." Unable to endure it any longer, she personally moved her chopsticks. However, his frying pan shifted according to the eye-catching trajectory of the red phoenix shunpo to avoid her hands. She grew tearful first before getting rather stubborn about it. "Oh, so you want to have a go, is that it?" I seriously couldn't tell whether I was inside the world of the ways of survival, or the ice-cold, handsome regressor Yu Yonghyuk shouldn't be doing this world. He continued evading Yijai's chopsticks and fed his little sister Yu Mia without twitching his eyebrows once, remaining utterly expressionless. However, there was something I could glean from that. And I came to a realization. He was genuinely serious about being here. Even though we are in this sort of time frame, why did Yu Yonghyuk let this event happen? I wasn't the only head representative of Kim Dokya Company. In more ways than one, Yu Yonghyuk was a far more obstinate person than I was, and also boasted far greater experience in running a group such as this one. Yet such a person had willingly participated in this camping trip. Yore Alaika TL Kim Dokya. Accompanying the fourth wall's voice, several paragraphs unfolded themselves before my eyes. Author Nim, how about going to a beach during this regression turn? That was a comment I posted a long time ago. Even though I remembered so much about the ways of survival, I had forgotten all about the comments I posted. Now that I thought about it, there was one event that Yu Yonghyuk never missed during his countless repeated regressions. Today, we take a break. That would be taking an off day. It happened during the original ways of survival, but hadn't happened so far in this world. Every time they were about to encounter another important hurdle, he'd take his companions to a different planet's tourist attractions. Of course, he had the pretext of finding necessary items for the upcoming scenarios, but he didn't force his group to do the same things as him. "Master, come join us and have some fun." "Hey Yijai, Kekek, take a gander at my abs, will ya? Even my black flame dragon praised them." "We're going to eat Yonghyuk-S's cooking today, right?" Even Yu Yonghyuk was like that, yet what was I like? "We must get ready for the next scenario." We were always in a hurry, as if we were being pursued. We never had any leeway, and as we got to the latter half of the scenarios, such tendency grew even stronger. Our goal was always right in front of our eyes. I acted as if the scenario themselves would break down if we didn't solve whatever it was in time. But now that I began thinking deeply about it, the scenarios would have been just fine even if we didn't hurry up and do something about them. Hey, Yigil Yong. We agreed not to use any skills here, didn't we? When did I? You gotta give it your best always. I heard the kids' voices as they were returning with hunted prey. Soon after that, I heard Han Soo-young's loud call that reverberated throughout the valley. "All right then, the treasure hunt event will now begin. The prize is a star relic from the Black Flame Dragon." "Wow, really? From that black flame dragon. I've hidden it somewhere in the valley, so the first one to find it is the winner. Ah, right. You're forbidden from using your skills, got that. Besides that, there are other prizes too, so. That star relic is mine. Han Myung-oh quickly discarded his fishing rod and jumped inside the stream, but a little while later, Jiang Hui-won grabbed hold of his head and threw him out of the water. In no time at all, Yi Jai-hai and the kids returning from their hunting trip all jumped into the valley's water too. Yo, hold up, Jai-hai Nuna. That's Ghost Fleet. You think I won't notice it just because they are tiny now? Yi Gil-yong, are you seriously tamming water bugs, you cheater? Both of you disqualified. How long had it been since all of my companions were smiling together like this? Maybe this could be our first time. They were able to smile even though the scenarios hadn't ended yet. They were able to chat away in happiness like that and share their stories. And while looking at that spectacle, Kim Dak-ya suddenly felt lonely for some reason. Could it be that I had failed to understand a single thing about the ways of survival? No, wait, regarding my companions instead. Maybe, because I was drunk in the fantasy of witnessing the conclusion, I actually ended up missing all the countless words that had to be read in order to reach the true conclusion. You have currently resolved 0 complaints. A scenario that previously felt like nothing important suddenly felt as imposing and difficult as a great fable now. I plopped down below a parasol and dazedly looked on. Someone lightly tapped me on the shoulder. How goes it with your scenario? Yu Sang-ah grinned refreshingly. I replied with a powerless grin of my own, and she addressed me again. Well, Dak-ya SSI, your communication skill has always been a little lacking, so it can't be helped, I guess. You were also like that back when we were working for the company. I was. You really didn't speak all that much to other people. I became utterly speechless after she mercilessly carpet-bombed me with facts. But then again, after giving it a bit of thought, it made total sense. I grew up without a friend from a young age. I wasn't clued in on how to socialize with other people, and back then, I only thought about how to weasel myself out of the company meal get-together. I figured that, rather than wasting time doing that, I might as well read The Ways of Survival one more time instead. Kim Dak Yayohave a fry end no W. And then here was an inorganic substance that tried to rile me up by saying that it was my friend. Yu Sang-ah settled down beneath the parasol too and observed our companions with a relaxed gaze. Perhaps she was going for the camping look herself, because rather than the usual Buddhist robe, she was now wearing a casual one-piece with a wide-brimmed straw hat. She sure knew how to match the atmosphere regardless of where she was. She was someone too good to be kept in the Kim Dak-ya company, run by a pretty useless leader, at the very least. Sang-ah SSI, do you by any chance regret getting in the subway that day? I wasn't sure why I asked her that. Even now, the events of the very first scenario remained vivid in my mind. If only Yu Sang-ah's bicycle didn't get stolen. If she got her start from somewhere else, then she might not have become Olympus' incarnation. Maybe she wouldn't have to die either. She wouldn't have to experience the pain of reincarnation too. No, I don't. I had never seen such a determined expression on her face before. So, Dak-ya SSI, you mustn't regret anything either. Pardon, regarding what? I mean everything. I wasn't sure what to say to her. It felt as if I'd only sound like an ass just by thanking her or expressing my gratitude. The ways of survival never taught me what I should say in moments like this. As if she could read my mind, she grinned refreshingly and pointed to someone over yonder. I think it'll be for the best that you speak to that person first. Episode 86, The Square Circle 2 Fin. Chapter 456, Episode 86, The Square Circle 3. My concerns. Yes, like, if you're unhappy about your work or... The first person I went to speak to was Yi Clhwa. She was wearing an outdoor scientist garb and with a small magnifying glass, studied every nook and cranny of my face as if I was some sort of an unidentified herb. She then replied to my question. Well, I don't particularly have one. She might be saying that, but there was no way that she didn't have any complaints. As the head representative of the company, I can only apologize to you. I'm aware that you have worked hard to protect Seoul during our absence. HM. It must have been very difficult too. Do you really think so? And not like staying back in Seoul must have been so much easier. Her voice sounded sharp, prompting my lips to close shut before I realized it. I knew it. That's what you were really thinking of. You were just being sarcastic, yes. No, never, I wouldn't. I know that others had been entering dangerous scenarios. Even if that was the case, remaining in Seoul wasn't all plain sailing, you know. YCLHWA lowered her gaze and began searching for something within the bushes once more. It should be around here somewhere. YCLHWA has never taken a day off. Her fable began speaking up for her instead. After the group departed from the industrial complex, she operated its sickbay and looked after the patients. Every day, the injured suffering from similar types of wounds would rush in. She watched them die, and while looking at their passing, she thought about her companions. I won't be much help in the latter half of the scenarios. I'm well aware of my own potential, and my constellation is also only a historical figure grade as well. But I still do my best every day. For sure, the intensity of status floating about her vicinity felt quite different from before. It wasn't as if her combat abilities had improved, but well, how should I put this? It was like her pool of knowledge and the skills had gotten even more profound. Whoever it is in the Kim Dokya company, I can save that person as long as he or she still breathes. I can ensure that no one will die. It was true that YCLHWA's current growth rate was unmatched in any of the regression turns from the original novel. If my guess was correct, then she should soon reach the pinnacle of life and death miraculous doctor. Without a doubt, she was a necessary person to achieve my dream ending. What kind of a person was I in the novel you read, Dokya SSI? I got flustered for a moment there by the unexpected question. You were an important person. Okay, by how much? YCLHWA was one of the heroines to appear in the Ways of Survival. However, I couldn't come out and say that she was Yu Jung-hyuk's lover from the past. From the get-go, I thought that he wouldn't want that to be known. And most importantly, I wasn't sure if that would be an appropriate description of the person called YCLHWA. Who was she, really? Well, that. Just before I could carry on, YCLHWA's expression brightened and she shouted out, found it. Her hand was holding a small flower. That must be the herb she was searching for. I immediately recognized what that was. White ghostly flame flower, the final ingredient for the life and death pill. At a casual glance, it looked like an ordinary wildflower. Eating this herb alone had no effect whatsoever. However, the miraculous elixir that was the life and death pill could never be concocted without this herb. She began smiling like a little kid. This sense of life that couldn't be felt from the pages of the Ways of Survival was emanating vividly right before my eyes. This is YCLHWA. That's why I gave up on recalling the words from the novel altogether, and then I said some lame things instead. You're the best doctor that I know of. Praise cooked up by a small kid might be better sounding than that. Even so, YCLHWA grinned back at me. Thank you, even if you didn't mean it. I did mean it, though. Please wait for me. I will turn those empty words into reality soon. I watched her leave in search of another herb and came to a realization. What she was curious about earlier wasn't the Ways of Survival. Unlike me, she didn't need such a novel in the first place. You have currently resolved 0 complaints. I hadn't made any headway into the scenario, but I didn't feel so bad. It's not that easy, right? I looked behind and found Yu Sang-a once more. Yes, it's not easy. But that's only natural. If you could finish up all the conversations you had been putting off as if it's some kind of an event, then that's something out of a novel, not reality. I guess so. Even then, you must carry on. I nodded my head. Who do you think I should speak to next? It had been better if you did it yourself, but I'll help you again this one last time. She used her hand to shield her eyes and scanned our companions. It was then a message entered my ear. Currently, Kim Dakya Company. Contracted workers are feeling dissatisfied. Contracted workers. Did our nebula have people like that? Yu Sanga then pointed to a spot. Why don't you head over there this time? The moment I looked there, I realized who the contracted workers were. A short while later, I was addressing 3 people standing before me. I have something to discuss with you. What is it? I'm really busy, so hurry up. I must go and find that Black Flame Dragon Star relic right now. Han Myung-o raised his voice as if to urge me along. Gong Pil-du and his disinterested face and the pouting Jang Ha-yong were standing next to him. I could easily tell that they weren't exactly happy about being summoned here like this. Even though they had experienced scenarios together with us, they hadn't joined the Kim Dakya Company properly yet. Everyone, there's something you should know first. I decided to tell them something that they didn't know, a piece of information that Kim Dakya Company's companions already knew, the ways of survival. It was a big decision on my part to tell them about it, but rather contrary to my initial expectation, Gong Pil-du's reaction was lukewarm at best. There was a time when I used to believe everything in the land price pamphlets. I guess you're still too naive. Pardon? Young people these days. It seemed that Gong Pil-du didn't really get what I was saying. On the other hand, Han Myung-o seemed to be under a great mental shock. So you knew everything, yet you just left me to end up in that wretched state. Jang Ha-yong also seemed to be surprised, albeit for different reasons. So, that's how it was. That's why you knew so much back in the demon world. Thankfully, their reactions weren't as bad as I thought. But then again, they had already met a regressor and plenty of reincarnators, so maybe my story didn't sound so crazy to them by now. I breathed a sigh of relief inwardly and continued on. There's only one reason why I told you this information. I'd like to formally hire you into the Kim Dakya Company. My words caused the 3 to exchange glances with each other. The first one to speak was Gong Pil-du, on whose authority Incarnation Gong Pil-du has joined Kim Dakya Company. Could it be that the term being coy was invented for this agency? Next up was Han Myung-o. Are you going to retain my previous position as a department head? Well, we don't have any ranks like that, but if you want, I can create one for you. Please make sure that you pay your wages on time. As for paternity leave and overtime, Incarnation Han Myung-o has joined Kim Dakya Company. Finally, I shifted my gaze over to Jang Ha-yong. Incarnation Jang Ha-yong has joined Kim Dakya Company. Okay, so, Flame Dragona, something happened just now and she was using her wall to send out messages of her employment to pretty much everywhere. Congratulatory messages from her friends in the star stream continued to flood in. While looking at her being genuinely happy, I grew a lot more complicated in my head. If I knew she'd be this happy, then I should have let her join us earlier. By the way, Kim Dakya, why are you suddenly letting me join you? She waited for my answer with sparkling eyes. I had several reasons why I didn't let Jang Ha-yong join the Kim Dakya Company, but at least for today, I didn't want to think about them. I definitely needed her. However, I didn't bring her into the nebula simply because her presence was a must during the conclusion. I wanted to witness the end of the scenario with you. Jang Ha-yong's eyes grew wider after she heard me. I felt uncomfortable while watching her pale cheeks tremble like that. As expected of someone possessing looks that easily slapped Yu Young-hyuk's cheeks at least 2 times in a row. She blinked her large, clear eyes and energetically nodded her head. I'll really work hard. She clenched her fists tightly and began typing away once more. Congratulations, you have resolved the complaint of the contracted worker. You have currently resolved 1 complaint. I finally succeeded with 1. So, being the head representative was this tough, huh? Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is asking you if the rumor is true. What rumor? Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is asking you if you really confess to Jang Ha-yong. Constellation, most ancient liberator, is asking the Makni son Wukong. Just what kind of a rumor was spreading around here? I had no idea what she was so busily typing away there, but regardless, I could see Jang Ha-yong diligently tapping on the imaginary keyboard in the air. "Hey you, come and eat supper." Han Soo-young's loud shout came from afar. The delicious aroma wafting in from somewhere attracted the companions, and we gathered around one by one. Then, Han Soo-young stared at Yu Young-hyuk as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "Well then, shall we taste your high and mighty cooking skill in action then? And why should I share my cooking with you?" He glared at the rest of the group with a menacing glare, before turning around to leave while throwing these following words behind. "There are leftovers that side, so why don't you eat that?" We looked over in the direction he was pointing at, and straight away we became utterly speechless. They were now witnessing the essence of cooking. We all settled down quietly on the table like a bunch of mice that got entranced by the Pied Piper, and then began rubbing our eyes in disbelief. These were dishes created out of the monster that Yi Gil-yong and Shin Yu-seung caught, as well as with the medicinal herbs Yi Clhwa had found. No, hang on. How could he even come up with a feast of this scale with only those ingredients? I was pretty certain that the dining table of Shi Huangdi who dreamed of immortality wouldn't be as flashy as this one. "Wow, master, you gotta come and cook during my funeral, okay?" "Why your funeral, though? That's really an ominous declaration, you know." The group began hurriedly chowing down the grub. Jiang Hui-won, Yi Jai-hai, Han Myung-o, Gong Pil-du, even Jang Ha-yong. They were all seriously focused on eating right now. Even Han Soo-young and Yu Sang-at too. "Hey, hold up, that's my share. There's enough to go around for everyone. Why are you being so greedy?" Some even began fighting over the food, too. "Ajasi, please try this one." "Hyung, this one too." Yi Gil-yong and Shin Yu-seung sat on either side of me and shoved spoonfuls of food into my mouth without a moment's rest. My cheeks swelled up like a hamster as I chewed the rice, and of course, I didn't forget to feed the kids side dishes in the meantime. It was tasty. Seriously tasty. So tasty, in fact, I was almost thankful that the ways of survival had become reality for a moment there. Shin Yu-seung's eyes rolled around as she chewed the meat, then she whispered in a small voice, "It's like we're on a school trip." When I heard her, I immediately wanted to kick myself to death for feeling thankful that the ways of survival had become reality. The school field trip, one of the things children had lost in this world. I placed my hands on the heads of the kids and spoke to them. "You're right, it's like a field trip." Although the one learning from this trip wasn't the kids but me. "Ajasi, what would you like to do after the scenarios are over?" "Hyung will live with me." "I wasn't asking you. What I want to do after the scenarios were over." Normally, I'd have smiled and glossed over the topic, but for some reason I ended up uttering out something without realizing it. "I want to buy a really big house and live together with everyone." When I raised my head, I noticed that the once noisy surroundings had fallen into an eerily silence. Yi Jai-hai, Jiang Hui-won, Gong Pil-du. Even Han Soo-young was looking at me, her mouth agape. Jiang Hui-won was the first to fire the salvo. "In that case, Dokyo SSI, you'll be paying for the house, yes?" "NG. Ajasi, you're really loaded, so you might be able to get a house in Gangnam. I'll sell you my land. If it's possible, somewhere close to the kids' school." I had no idea that something I just threw out there would cause such a ripple. And so the group chatted about the potential house I'd buy throughout the supper. Stuff about how the interior should look like, or how many rooms it needed to have. Washing the dishes was left to me and Jiang Hui-won, the two losers from the rock, paper, scissors. I could have won by using Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, but of course I wouldn't do that during this trip. "You have acquired a new fable. You have acquired the fable, the one who yanked out the conscience's fur." Also, it was nice to get a new fable too. As I was cleaning the dishes, I spotted something falling in the distant skis above. It was a shooting star. falling stars that left behind lengthy trails. Most likely, those were planets that were falling for real. The star stream was marching towards its own oblivion. Jiang Huiyuan, looking up at the sky next to me, spoke up. It's like back then in the cinema dungeon. I nodded my head. For sure, it was kind of similar to that day. We were also together like this on the rooftop of the dungeon. We were looking at the falling stars and making our wishes. Dakyo SSI, you asked me to become your sword back then. Indeed, I asked her to become my comrade in that place. And after that, she had become the greatest ally anyone could ask for. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to arrive at this moment in time. But someone else became the literal sword instead of me. Those words made me shift my gaze over to the steel sword, laying quietly on the ground. Even as everyone was taking their much-deserved break, the sole person to miss out on the festivities was right there. Yehyunseong, with his heart not beating, he seemed to regain his consciousness sporadically, but he remained as a sword and didn't want to move. Please do not worry. Before we head off to the next scenario, I'll definitely wake up Hyunseong SSI. You know of a way. I nodded my head. Yehyunseong's issue wasn't the only one we need to deal with, though. We now required much greater power, because our goal didn't simply stop at clearing the scenarios, that's why. To fight the Bureau as well as the entirety of the star stream, I needed to start gathering constellations that would stand with us. Constellation, Master of Steel, is looking at you. And Yehyunseong's constellation backer would be the first to join us. Jiang Huiyuan spoke up as if my confident expression left an impression on her. By the way, Dakya SSI. Yes. Will it be fine for you to stand around here trying to look cool? I mean, aren't you in the middle of a scenario? You really aren't a being kidnapped and dying enthusiast, are you? Along with her words, the scenario window popped up before my eyes. The day is coming to a close. You have currently resolved one complaint. I reconfirmed the failure penalty of the sub-scenario once more. Failure death. I looked up at the shooting star in the sky. Maybe this might very well be my final scenario. Episode 86, The Square Circle 3 Fin. Chapter 457, The Square Circle 4. The time limit for the scenario was until midnight today. It was already 9 p.m., so there were less than 3 hours remaining. How did the time fly by so quickly anyway? I heard that happy moments would pass you by really quickly. It must have been true. 4 complaints still need to be answered, and only 3 hours remain. No matter what, I was cutting it real close. From the beginning, solving 5 of such difficult missions was clearly forcing it. In the end, I decided to resort to that. Buyuya. Dakibus had jurisdiction over sub-scenarios, so she should be able to control one just fine. Also, since the failure penalty was not death, but death, I was thinking that they wouldn't kill me for real, and Bu wasn't answering. Where are you, our cute little Bu? Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is cackling at your ill fortune. Constellation, Queen of the Darkest Spring, is urging you to seriously carry this scenario out. Seeing that the channel was open, Bu must be nearby for sure, but I decided to pull out the hidden trump card. But that caused the empty air to quiver a little. Then a ball of cotton with a small horn attached on top rose out from there. Abayat. Bu popped out with a poof and began giggling away. I didn't smile back though. Bu, I'm sorry about this, but can you cancel this scenario? Ayo Bayat. I couldn't tell whether she was trying to say Eva or over. Constellations agreeing with the applicable scenario's probability are rejecting the scenario cancellation. Hang on, could this be a bounty scenario instead? Constellation, demon-like judge of fire, is arguing that this scenario is a necessity for you. Constellation, abyssal black flame dragon, is criticizing you, telling you not to use a cowardly method. Constellation, bald general of justice, is saying that if you're a true comrade to them, then you should use your valor and tenacious spirit too. Constellation, Goryeo's first sword, is simply denying the cancellation. They are in sync with each other only in times like this, aren't they? Yes, yes, I get it now. Constellation, most ancient liberator, is cheering on his Makni. I couldn't really get used to the new modifier for the great sage Heaven's equal. We parted ways right away after the journey to the west. Scenario came to an end, but I knew we'd get to see each other soon enough. In any case, who should it be? Who should I speak to next? It should be someone holding the highest amount of complaints towards me, right? I studied my companions one by one, leisurely sitting around together after that fulfilling supper. That was when the midday tryst came flying in my way. What are you looking at? Okay, let's skip Han Soo-young for now. Her problems weren't on the level that I could fix anyway. You making fun of me? I continued to search for the next candidate. The next two I spotted were Yu Seung-yi and Gil Yong-yi. While looking at the two lying side by side and patting their slightly bulging tummies, it almost felt as if the fruit of good and evil was whispering to me from deep inside my mind. If it's their troubles, can I easily solve them? Even if I set aside the cowardly reason for now, I still needed to have a serious talk with Gil Yong-yi. Constellation, Yi Gil Yong's sponsor is staring at you. Although he looked the same on the outside as before, Yi Gil Yong's status had a faint trace of demonic aura permeating it. Would it be okay to talk to him now? However, wasn't it too open here? Constellation, Master of Skywalk, is observing your actions. Constellation, Lily blooming on Aquarius, is focusing her attention on you. Not only that, constellations were watching us too. I couldn't really imagine how the channel's constellations would react if I went and carelessly got in touch with that side now. Even then, I should at least talk to him. Currently, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, second stage, is in activation. The inside of my head rang with a BZZ, and the skill was activated forcibly once more. This was happening rather often lately. I wasn't sure whether it was because I read The Ways of Survival too much, or due to some other reason, but ba-dump, 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 ba-dump. Their voices soon entered my head. Dakya Hyung will come and talk to me, right? Is he coming over now? NG. I better tell him about a big problem. I must tell him something really shocking. What if Shin Yu-seung talks about something bigger than mine? I definitely must say something more shocking than Yi Gil Yong. My steps came to a halt. It was not because I was scared of the kids, though. Anyways, I shifted my gaze to the person crouching next to them instead. I miss them. Yi Jai-hai, with a sad expression, was looking at the distant sky. She was an energetic chatterbox usually, so it was rare to see her make such face. I could guess who she was referring to when she said she missed them. The first scenario would have been a nightmare to everyone, but it must have been especially worse for her. Even if the Kim Dakya company was here for her, one person couldn't really substitute for someone else. I wordlessly approached her and lightly poked her on the shoulder. Yi Jai-hai looked behind at me. Oot, what's this, Ajasi? You finished with the dishes? Yeah. Wait, did you come here because of the scenario? It's not entirely about that, but I don't have any particular complaints, so you don't need to talk to me, though. Why don't you speak to others first? Even now, she was worried about others. No matter how badly she was hurting, she was still thinking of other people's pain first. Yi Jai-hai from Chungmuro grew up like that, and she grew up into an adult like that too. You can talk to me anytime. If you don't want to talk to me, then it'll be fine with someone else too. But you don't have to huddle in a corner and let it fester inside you. Maybe she didn't expect me to say something like that, because Yi Jai-hai began blinking her eyes next. Ajasi, don't try to act cool, okay? She smirked and punched me in the shin with her sturdy fist. I thought my bone was broken or something. You have currently resolved one complaint. A simple chat on this level couldn't resolve Yi Jai-hai's troubles. Even then, I still had to speak to her. She lightly shook her beer glass around and while standing up spoke to me. All right then, since I'm full, I should go and stretch my limbs for a bit. You shouldn't exercise after drinking, you know. I feel fine, though. Seeing her swing her sword about like that, she definitely was her master's student, all right. Hang on a bit. Now that I thought about it, there was one guy who should be the most dissatisfied by me around here, wasn't there? I quickly scanned the campsite, but strangely enough, I couldn't locate that idiot no matter how hard I looked. Hey, you deaf, when someone is calling you, you should. Along with a resounding slap, someone smacked me in the back of the head. I looked behind and spoke to the culprit. Hey, Han Soo-young. What now? Where is Yu Young-hyuk? Yu Young-hyuk, he was over th. Only then did she realize it too. Honestly speaking, that guy usually acted on his own and often disappeared on us without warning, so this shouldn't come across as all that surprising. The problem had to with the fact that he didn't disappear alone this time. Han Soo-young looked into the wide-open rear door of the X-grade Ferragini and spoke up. The secretive plotter is gone too. The secretive plotter, surrounded in the transparent ceiling sphere, landed on the ground with a thud and roughly rolled around in the dirt. He was still unconscious. Yu Young-hyuk quietly looked down on him, then slowly unsheathed the dark heavenly demon sword and addressed the plotter. I know that you're already awake. The secretive plotter slowly opened his eyes. Accompanied by faint sparks, energy from a fable surged throughout his body. For a moment there, his fables were returning to him. You don't seem to know how to enjoy these brief moments of peace. I don't have a habit of enjoying my peace with an enemy near me. Are you planning to kill me? That is indeed a wise move. However, you should know by now that you can't really kill me. That was true. The secretive plotter was another Yu Young-hyuk. Killing him simply meant the creation of another world line. Even then, Yu Young-hyuk didn't let go of his dark heavenly demon sword. It'll be far better than watching you mess up this world line. The plotter laughed. They were both Yu Young-hyuks. They may have lived two different lives, but their nature as Yu Young-hyuk was the same, and that was why they could understand each other's thought process the best. Do you believe that your power alone is enough to kill me? Without Kim Dokya's fable, the current you can't fight against an outer god. That might be the case, but killing you will be rather simple. I only have to shatter that ceiling sphere. A faint trace of unrest flitted in and out of the plotter's expression. Currently, the secretive plotter was inside the unstable Apocalypse Dragon ceiling sphere, created by the 999th turns Uriel. You're deliberately not removing the ceiling sphere. If you break it, then the hounds chasing after the abyss will appear from the gap in space and time. That's why. It only had been for a brief moment, but still, Yu Young-hyuk got to steal a glance into the memories of the 1864 regression turns engraved into the hellscape of eternity. That's where he got to learn partial information on outer gods. The hounds that chased after the abyss, he learned about the hounds of Tindalos during that time too. They were the cleaners capable of detecting the distortion in a world line. They can only intrude from where angles below 90 degrees exist. The normal you wouldn't be troubled by something like a few hounds, but with how weakened you are, the story should change greatly. The flow of status loaded onto the dark heavenly demon sword grew thicker. Yu Young-hyuk too hadn't fully recovered from his wounds, so fighting the plotter head-on was impossible. However, shattering the ceiling sphere shouldn't pose a challenge. The plotter's expression changed, perhaps after figuring out Yu Young-hyuk's intentions. It was the face of a man who had accepted something. And so, just as Yu Young-hyuk's dark heavenly demon sword was about to make a move, "Oh, bye." Someone's head poked out from the bushes. "What are you doing?" Yu Young-hyuk was taken by surprise and while turning his head towards her, shouted out, "Yumiya, don't come closer." Dismay brushed past his expression next. Because he had focused all of his perception on the secretive plotter, he ended up making such an egregious mistake. "Go back to where our companions are. This place is dangerous." "Don't want to," she replied in a cold voice, something she had never used before. Yu Young-hyuk replied in stupefaction, "What? You don't even come back to Earth all that often anyway, so stop nagging me. You promised to stay with me for a few days, didn't you? Both Sujeong Ajima and Jeongran Ajima are always busy, you know. And I'm tired of listening to Grandma Boksun's stories of the past, too. Yumiya clearly enunciated every single word as she strode forward. Yu Yonghyok's judgment blurred for a moment then. She seized that opening and quickly ran towards the front of the secretive plotter. By the way, he looks exactly like you, Oppa. Who are you exactly? Before long, she was within the touching distance of the plotter. Yu Yonghyok grew anxious. He wanted to swing his sword right now and shatter the ceiling sphere, but his little sister might get swept up in the air current if he made the slightest mistake here. As he began deliberating on his options, she placed her hand on the transparent ceiling sphere and innocently asked the figure inside, "Are you trapped in this thing? You want me to help you get out of there?" Yu Yonghyok dearly wanted to move and pull her away from there right now, but for some reason, he couldn't. The secretive plotter was staring at Yu Mia. His eyes were trembling from a very powerful agitation. Even Yu Yonghyok was surprised to see such an expression appear on the plotter's face, someone who had lived through an untold amount of time. Yu Mia pressed him further in the meantime. "Come on now, answer me." Episode 86, The Square Circle 4, Fin. Chapter 458, The Square Circle 5. Yu Yonghyok was prepared to swing his dark heavenly demon sword if the secretive plotter tried to do something foolish, but rather unexpectedly, the latter easily answered back. He didn't even use his true voice either. "You're right, I am trapped in here." His real, pure voice was heard for the first time. That prompted Yu Mia to reply with a bright smile. "Ask my Oppa to free you. He's super strong, you see." She spoke in an innocent voice, but he replied with a slow shake of his head. "I can't leave this thing." "What, why not?" The secretive plotter didn't reply. "Wait, did my Oppa do something to you? He threatened you with scary words, didn't he?" "No, that's not it." "It's not, what then?" The plotter didn't reply again. Without saying anything, he stared at Yu Mia. He stared for a long time at the one person that no longer existed for him. And for the first time ever, a faint smile formed on his lips. "It's because I chose to be in here." Yu Yonghyok saw that smile and couldn't say anything. Yu Mia was busy asking what he meant, and meanwhile, the plotter quietly stared back at her. The latter slowly raised his hand, and his palm overlapped with hers through the thin, transparent layer. Their hand sizes were fairly similar. These two palms may have overlapped after transcending time and space, but they could never truly meet. It was then Yu Mia blinked slowly and began faltering a little. "Why am I so sleepy?" Her body slowly fell to the ground. Yu Yonghyok quickly dashed to her side and embraced her. "You bastard, what have you done?" "I only helped her dream of nice things." Yu Yonghyok studied his little sister. For sure, her incarnation body showed no signs of any strange symptoms. No, she simply was in a deep slumber, softly murmuring indecipherable sleep talk like beach volleyball and squid party, etc. He glared at the secretive plotter with a complicated expression. No matter how weakened he was, by using Yu Mia he would have been able to escape from this situation pretty easily. However, he didn't do that. He simply stared longingly at the sleeping face of the girl instead. "What happened to Mia in your world?" "She survived." He answered immediately. "And also died." "That too was immediate." "What does that even?" Just as Yu Yonghyok opened his lips, he understood what those answers meant. So he shut his mouth right away. Seemingly crying sparks ever so faintly danced around. Under the pretext of the disconnected film theory, the memories of these two beings trembled and their fables shifted. In one world line, Yu Mia survived for a long time, even after he died. The world of a man who lived 1864 lifetimes. Just what kind of a world would that be? However, in another world line she died. A regressor might have lived far more presence than anyone out there, but in reality, he was nothing more than a ghost of the past. He was an existence that had to move on to the next turn because he failed to alter the past. 0th turn, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 1863rd. This being was not a Yu Jung-hyuk from any of those regression turns. But he was the Yu Jung-hyuk that belonged to all the worlds, the man who carried all the worlds as his burden. And that was why he was more Yu Jung-hyuk than any other Yu Jung-hyuks. You're pitying me. Who would do that to Do you believe that my life was a misery? Yu Jung-hyuk couldn't tell if that was a form of sympathy directed at himself. The blade of the dark heavenly demon sword he held tightly was faintly trembling. Why was he hesitating now? He had come this far already, so what was left to hesitate? Just because he heard a bit of this bastard's past history. The secretive plotter opened his lips. Did you know? There was this young boy in the frontmost subway car that always died during every regression turn. That question came out of nowhere. Yu Jung-hyuk naturally recalled the events of the subway train. The very first scenario, the very first encounter with hell that he had to experience every single time. However, Yu Jung-hyuk didn't know anything about such a boy, because there were simply too many people who died in that manner back then. While regressing several times, I tried to prevent his death, but it was impossible. He was really a young boy, younger even than Yi Gil-yong. However, even such a child had to prove his credentials. For all of the 1863 lives, that child couldn't even put up a proper fight and had to die. He died and died and died over and over again. Yu Jung-hyuk couldn't say a single word. The plotter asked him again. Between a man who regressed 1863 times and a child who has to repeatedly die for 1863 times with no recollections of it, which one do you think is actually more miserable? That is, the plotter was implying this, that your pity had no meaning, no value whatsoever. Even then, Yu Jung-hyuk couldn't readily accept that. Indeed, there was no meaning in comparing the importance of different miseries. However, that also didn't mean that misery didn't exist. The star stream tries to make the lives of everyone into Gisunjianjiol. However, a life was never supposed to be that. No, it's an unreasonable thing that can end at any time, whether it Gi beginning, Seung development, or even during Jian climax. And that's why, even if my life comes to an end here, it shouldn't come as a surprise. Did the boy from the subway make the same expression as this man? Yu Jung-hyuk couldn't tell. The secretive plotter stared back at him with a pair of quiet, still eyes. Yu Jung-hyuk stared back into those eyes for the longest time, before averting his gaze away while lowering the dark heavenly demon sword. You'll end up seeing that boy's death for the 1864th time if you regress again. In the end, he returned his sword back to its scabbard. This could be the wrong decision. Even then, Yu Jung-hyuk had made up his mind. Maybe he too didn't expect such a choice, because the secretive plotter remained speechless for a long while. You've been greatly influenced by Kim Dokya, it seems. Shut your mouth. I can kill someone like you at any. Multiple presences were drawing near. Voices were calling out to him. They were Kim Dokya and Han Soo-yong, plus those of the Kim Dokya Company's people. Although it irks me to admit this, let me say that one thing is for certain. This world line is different from any that I have lived through so far. It's possible that you and your group can truly witness what's beyond that wall. However, do not keep your hopes up, thinking that you'll see the conclusion you desire. And also, even if that conclusion wasn't what you initially wanted. The plotter's true voice suddenly grew fainter. His eyelids were slowly closing up. He was falling into another bout of deep slumber. Just as Kim Dokya emerged out from the thicket, the plotter finished what he wanted to say. Do not think of this world as a failed turn. We played beach volleyball. That was Yu Mia's answer after I asked her about what happened here. I'm telling you, we grilled squids, and I played beach volleyball with my oppa. Could it be that one's power of comprehension is lower if you're ugly? I wanted to tell her that there were 3 things wrong in her statement. 1, we were not near an ocean. 2, I wasn't ugly and my power of comprehension was. Well, I guess nothing serious has happened here, Han Soo-young muttered in relief. Indeed, we couldn't see any traces of Yu Yong-hyuk causing an accident, and the secretive plotter was still stuck in a deep slumber. I put the plotter back inside the X-grade Ferragini. There were a few things that didn't sit well with me, but now wasn't the time to grill the one responsible. Okay, everyone, please gather around. Let's start the campfire. The flames rose up thickly and brightened the darkness of the campsite. Time was approaching closer to midnight. Only then did I remember something important. Hang on, my scenario hasn't. Damn it, I forgot all about it because of Yu Yong-hyuk. I could hear Bu humming Boat, Boat just above my head. Scenario time limit has elapsed. Would I really get killed like this? Sub-scenario, workers' off day has ended. You need to resolve a total of 5 complaints. You have currently resolved 1 complaint. You have resolved all of your employees' complaints. New fable related to the Kim Dok-ya company is being generated. What? Seriously, man, it's like you forgot your wits somewhere or some such, muttered Han Soo-young as she stared at the side of my face. Companions were giggling to themselves while looking at me. It was then I recalled their replies whenever I tried to talk to them. I don't have any particular complaints. That was for real. No one here will blame you, you know. Han Soo-young's disinterested voice spread out. We sat around soaking in the bonfire without saying anything else. I thought I could sense their hearts contained in the silence, and that caused my emotions to well up for some reason. Jiang Hui-won added something on top. Well, if you want me to find something to talk to you about, then I can think of one, but it's not a complaint, so. Even though the warm bonfire was before me, why did a chill creep down my back just then? In any case, we rested really well today. Someone didn't seem to have gotten any rest, though. Yu Sang-ah spoke, and Yi Jai-hai followed her up on that. But is it over like this? Aren't we going to, like, light candles and start sobbing, or write stuff on a rolling paper? This ain't even a real school trip, so why should we? Besides the paper. While listening to Han Soo-young's retort, I began thinking. Rolling paper, written by her, was it? That might be quite interesting indeed. Han Soo-young suddenly stopped talking there and looked at me before asking a question. You want me to write one for you? Not really, we aren't little kids anyway. Wait a minute. Didn't you say you never had any friends and didn't even go to membership trainings either? I guess you've never received one before then. If the total reserve of my mental energy declined during this trip, then it was all Han Soo-young's fault. A few members of Kim Dok-ya company, blessed with strong drive, had already purchased pens and large papers from the Dokibai bundle. Seriously, though, these greedy Dokibus even charged coins for something like that. Yu Yong-hyuk, sitting across me on the other side of the campfire, seemed to be angry as well. I won't participate in something like this. Although his reason for anger seemed to be different from mine. Nevertheless, seeing my companions gathered around closely and scribbling on their papers gave me this fresh perspective on things. It's like this was a writing get-together for the poor, friendless Kim Dok-ya. While everyone was writing their names on the papers and passing it along, Yi Gil-yong suddenly raised his hand up. Hyung, I bought this off the Dokibai bundle, so can I fire it? Shin Yuseung discovered the toy in the boy's hand, and her expression brightened up instantly. Isn't that the same thing people were firing around the Han River? Yeah, I remembered that, so I bought it. Let me try it too. No way, you buy your own. It's 2,000 coins, you know. Yi Gil-yong was currently holding onto a parachute helicopter. I had seen that a couple of times before too. It was a toy that, when you pulled hard at the attached string and then let go, it'd fly up into the sky while emitting bright light. His toy seemed a bit special though, as it featured 4 large wings shaped like a square. Besides all that though, that thing cost 2,000 coins. Okay, I'm gonna fire it. Yi Gil-yong fired the parachute helicopter into the air. The toy flew up and while spinning around vigorously, dyed the surroundings with bright light. The light scattered as if it was fireworks going off. Even though they should have been familiar with far more spectacular sights than this, the group still looked on genuinely impressed. The square-shaped wings of the helicopter spun around quickly and formed a circle. I thought it looked like a portal that led to the world we used to live in. We might not be able to go back anymore, but still, I felt the nostalgia of that world from it. It was around then that a system message resounded out. Incarnation, Yi-Gil-Yong, has used the item parachute helicopter extra-large optical screen. The spinning wings of the helicopter grew larger and larger, and eventually changed shape to that of a huge screen. Yijai frowned deeply. What the heck? It was a hologram panel. We now have to watch a scenario even in this place. Yi-Gil-Yong, did you even read the user's manual before? No, I thought it was just a helicopter, so I. Just as the boy tried to make his excuse, a small earthquake suddenly rocked the vicinity. The expressions on the companions hardened instantly. What kind of crap is it this time? Accompanying Han Soo-Young's words, we all focused our attention on the screen in the air. And when we did, we understood the reason for the earthquake. First of all, it didn't belong to the Korean peninsula. The optical screen was now displaying the American continent, and right before our eyes, that large continent was disappearing in its entirety, because of a gigantic island rising up from the deepest part of the earth. Along with the entrance of that island, the American continent was being erased from the map itself. The applicable world line has reached its critical point. Elevation of the Forgotten Islands has begun. Yu Young-hyuk, his expression hardened, quietly muttered out. The end has begun. Episode 86, The Square Circle 5 Fin. Chapter 459, Episode 87, The Heart of Steel 1. We headed back to Seoul right away. The first thing we confirmed was the safety of the industrial complex. We haven't detected any other strange phenomena after that event, said Aileen, currently in charge of the Central Situation Room. The display panel in the room was showing the footage shot near the Pacific Ocean. A gigantic island was rising up from the part of the ocean close to the American continent. I had no doubt that this was one of the calamities I knew of. Back in the ways of survival, the master of that island was a very powerful upper-rank outer god. Our issue now would be whether it was the same guy or not. My mother. She's currently at the eastern coastline. Eastern coastline. The rise of the Forgotten Island has begun. As the system message resounded out, we witnessed the waves rushing in at the other side of the Pacific. An unprecedented scale of terrain alteration had occurred, so it was obvious that an equally incredible volume of tsunami waves would crash into the various parts of the world pretty soon. Naturally, the one to bear the worst of it was the United States. Quagagagag. Horrible screams of incarnation bodies resounded out, and the streets of New York were being swept away. Tsunami waves weren't the end. Using the waves themselves, the lower-ranked outer gods, the nameless ones, were rushing in as well. These low-ranked creatures were flooding in unchecked to tear and devour the American mainland. There was no time to ask for help, either. Almost half of the continent had disappeared in less than 30 minutes after the calamity began. 1 hour later, the whole of the USA was covered in a jet-black aura. The scale of this calamity was so great that the Dark Castle, or the disaster of floods, couldn't even remotely compare in the scope. Could it be that my mother? Aileen nodded her head and added something else. I'm not entirely sure if it qualifies as a good thing, but... Next up, the display panel switched to the eastern coastline of the Korean peninsula. As expected, the tsunami wave had reached this far as well. Although the height of the wave was much lower compared to the one that hit America, and there were no nameless ones riding on it, a tsunami wave still presented an enormous natural disaster all on its own. Oh, the wind god of the heavens! As soon as my mother's yell came to an end, powerful gusts of wind exploded out from the folding fan she was holding. Pungbiku acted all stiff and uptight back in the great war of saints and demons. was pulling his weight this time, it seemed. Even Zhou Yongran, who could be called my mother's right hand, was taking an active part in the event as well. Great fable Shindansu has begun its storytelling. Hongik must have been paying attention to this event, because the Shindansu's fable had planted its roots deeply into the ocean and was blocking the disaster by using the Korean peninsula's probability. While looking as if she just lost 10 years of her life, Han Soo-young muttered dazedly, "Anyways, isn't that woman in the United States too?" There was only one person that Han Soo-young would refer to as that woman. Couldn't she have used her precognition to predict that? I was about to speak to you in regards to that, Matt. Even before Aileen could finish, the side door to the Situation Room opened up and a certain someone made her entrance. Confirming the visitor's identity, Yu Young-hyuk immediately reached towards the dark heavenly demon sword. "We didn't come to fight, so stay your sword, conquering king." Her eye of great demon vibrated brightly. They were the prophet Anna Croft and the Zarathustras she led. The alert has been issued 5 hours ago. Most have escaped to other parts of the world, but still, many failed to leave on time. Why didn't you ask us for help? We simply didn't have the leeway. And also, we couldn't fully trust the information gleaned from the precognition, too. It was the first time that such large-scale information on the future had gone through such a sudden change, so Anna Croft looked quite troubled just then. A sudden change in the large-scale information on the future. That would be a pretty good indication that even her precognition didn't possess any merit when it came to the final scenario. Han Soo-young asked as if she wanted to nitpick. "What about Asgard? They finished the Great War of Saints and Demons successfully, so they should have started supporting you once more." Anna Croft bit her lip hard as her head dropped lower. She then muttered softly, "They told me to abandon the USA." The final scenario was about to begin. Most likely, not even Asgard would have the room to dwell on the fate of some continent from one of the many planets out there. Because Earth wouldn't be the only planet experiencing the signs of the impending apocalypse. The ku-gu-gu-gu exploding noise came out of the display panel. Ga-ga-ga-ga-ga-yak. Where? The outer gods that captured the American coastline began howling out. I recalled the 95th scenario I experienced during the 1863rd turn. The invasion of the outer gods began sooner in that world line than ours, and soon we'd end up in a similar state, because that's the story the stinking Bureau wanted to see after all. Does South Korea have any countermeasures? Still thinking about it. I heard that you secretly contacted a king of outer gods. It seemed that she was talking about the secretive plotter here. Technically speaking, we have captured him actually. Anna Croft's eyes visibly quaked when she heard me. She didn't seem to be aware of that. In that case, can this calamity be stopped through him? He's exhausted a great deal of probability, so that's not going to work. Besides, he's unrelated to this calamity. You know something, don't you? I didn't reply right away and simply held Anna Croft's gaze. One needed to offer up their information first if they wanted to learn something new from the others. That was the basics of information exchange. She must have figured out what I wanted from her, because she suddenly sighed out softly and began telling her story. I don't have a lot of info to give you. You can start with those. Firstly, the current locations for the Great Apocalypse scenario are a portion of the Pacific and the American continent. I already knew that. Applicable location is currently undergoing the Great Apocalypse. I confirmed a transparent dome being generated over the American continent as well as the whole of the Pacific Ocean. The nameless ones weren't allowed to leave outside the dome, it seemed. That was probably the extent of the probability the outer gods had been permitted at the moment. Secondly, the nameless ones can't be hunted down with regular weapons. Obviously, the weapons of the past don't work, and even the star relics from lower-graded scenarios are useless as well. Actually, the display panel did catch the sight of several incarnations desperately struggling against the nameless ones. One of them was the owner of a pretty well-known star relic, but his axe failed to cut the flesh of the nameless ones properly. But how? The flesh of the incarnation body ripped apart by the sharp fangs splattered onto the screen, causing Yijai to frown and turn her head away. I didn't look away, but continued to observe the scene closely. Exclusive skill, comprehension, is activating. On the surface of the nameless one's carapaces, I spotted faint letters floating around. Yu Yonghyuk spoke up first. It's a stigma. It's not just any stigma, either. If it can stay in an uninterrupted activation like that, then it's already in the visualized fable stage. The visualized fable. Indeed, it was about time that such a level of probability would be allowed. Yu Yonghyuk nodded his head in agreement. Most likely, the king of those nameless ones must be a being possessing incredible defensive capabilities. The dependents of a king would naturally follow their boss's fable, just like how the K-Coma Yu Yonghyuks, the dependents of the secretive plotter, had done so. The outer god that raised the island in the middle of the Pacific was most likely one of the 5 kings mentioned in the book written by the recorders of fear. The calamity of the Western world, the master of the sunken island. I spoke up as if to reassure my companions. Please, you don't have to worry too much. Upper-level constellations should possess weapons that can kill them. However, no constellations are participating in the battle. For sure, I couldn't see any constellations inside the display panel, not even the common historical figure grades. We should start gathering them then. I glanced at Bu while getting ready to use my true voice. The channel was abnormally silent for some reason. Everyone must have seen that spectacle, yet there was not a single indirect message so far. It was possible that they were fearful of the king, that hadn't emerged from the deepest part of the ocean. Zhang Haiyong. Our gazes briefly met and she nodded her head. If it was difficult to talk to constellations through the channel, then it'd be a good idea to borrow her powers. And a short while later. No one's replying. Not even one. But that was not possible. There were so many constellations in the star stream, after all. The Black Flame Dragon was the only one that sent me a reply, but even he said that he's too busy and can't talk. Did you contact Olympus? What about the underworld? I called them first, but no reply either. Something was wrong here. I could somewhat understand if it's the Olympus, but Underworld should have replied for sure. Not only that, what about Uriel or the great sage Heaven's equal? Han Suyong next to me clicked her tongue and spoke up. It's obvious what happened. This is the true nature of the creatures called the constellations. Each and every modifier of all the constellations that cheered us on brushed past my head. There were so many of them, yet none wanted to help us. Meanwhile, Han Suyong continued on. Many constellations watched out fables. Some cheered us on while some were jealous of us. There were variety of reactions, sure. And we earned lots of coins too, but that's as far as it goes. You think the world was truly moved by our stories? Do you really think you have managed to change the star stream? I'm not that naive, but still. Constellations only subscribe to the channels that meet their tastes. They are no longer entertained, so they simply moved onto other channels. That's all. I couldn't be sure whether Han Suyong was right or not. Next location for the Great Apocalypse is Northeast Asia. Time remaining until the start of the Great Apocalypse scenario is 14 days 12 hours and 7 minutes. But I was sure that the planet Earth would go down the drain if they continued to avoid us. Jiang Huiwan asked the question, what should we do? Well, it's not as if I didn't foresee something like this happening. My words caused Han Suyong to narrow her eyes. You got something. If they are not willing to meet us, then we should go and speak to them instead. Where will you go first then? As I thought, it's the easiest of the lot, the underworld, right? I think you're probably the only person out there who calls the underworld the easiest. I ignored the smirking Han Suyong and looked at Jiang Huiwan. Asking for Underworld's aid was indeed a priority, but there was something else more urgent than that right now. We had about 14 days left. With the minimum effort, we needed to get the maximum possible result. We should regain our lost comrade first. What I was looking at was the steel sword hanging on Jiang Huiwan's hips. Soul of the character, Yi Hyunseong is in slumber. The after effects of the steel transformation 5th stage was worse than I expected, it seemed. We'll go meet the Master of Steel. The Master of Steel, will someone like that help us? I nodded my head. The Master of Steel is a powerful constellation. Although he's not a myth grade, there's no doubt we need his powers far more urgently than any top-tier constellations out there. How come? I don't have the time to give you a detailed explanation. For now, let's get ready to move. We needed an emergency hotline, as well as the minimum level of defensive forces, so Jang Haiyong, Gong Pil-du, and Yi Clhwa were left behind in the industrial complex. I felt bad about leaving them behind again, but after seeing their expressions, I got the feeling that I was actually doing them a huge disservice by thinking that way. When I thought about it, Yi Clhwa said something similar to that, didn't she? Come back soon and leave this place to us. Them being left behind in Seoul wasn't easier of the two jobs. Just like how the story continued on because there were things that hadn't been told yet. We got in the X-grade Ferragini immediately and entered the dimensional road network. Our coordinate was Oz 7611. Resplendent stars of the star stream brushed past us, and tension gradually dyed the expressions of my companions. You don't have to be that tense, everyone. Just think of it as going out for a fun outing. Take it as an extension of that workers' revolution or whatever you called it. But isn't it working hours right now? I'm saying this because where we're headed off to is that scary. Where exactly are we going? Well, as I've told you, we're going to the stronghold of the Master of Steel. Just what the heck is that guy's real identity anyway? Han Soo-yong became too frustrated and shot me that question. It's more or less possible to guess the identities of other constellations through their modifiers, right? The prisoner of the golden headband is Sun Wukong, while the god of wine and ecstasy is Dionysus. But this guy, I just can't figure it out. And there was no info on him in the parts that I read either. Well, if you're that curious, why don't you take a guess through the predictive plagiarism? You want me to use my ability on something this small? I shrugged my shoulders. I took a look at the faces of my companions, and not just Han Soo-yong, but everyone seemed to be really curious about who this Master of Steel could be. Jiang Huiwan asked me, is he someone from a myth that we know? He's not from a myth, but well, he's a really famous constellation regardless. Actually, there's even a famous story that used his fable as its foundation. But I don't think the kids know about it all that well, though. My words caused both Shin Yu-seung and Yi Gil-yong to become dejected right away. Just before I could continue on, noises of explosions came from behind us. Those sons of bitches. Han Soo-yong, steering the vehicle, cried out in sheer astonishment. Shadows of battleships were cast on the rear-view mirror, and it wasn't just one or two, either. At a bare minimum, there were dozens of spaceships giving us chase while scattering ether particles. Shin Yu-seung asked me, aren't they from a nebula? Why are they attacking us? I couldn't be sure, but those things looked like fable weapons belonging to great nebulas such as Vedas or Papyrus. Yi Jai-hai frowned deeply and spoke up, should I just summon my Geobuxian? No, don't. We don't have the time to fight them. Step on it, Han Soo-yong. We didn't have too much to go until our destination, anyway. In the blink of an eye, the X-grade Ferragini shot forward and crossed the dimensional road in a shiver-inducing speed. And soon afterwards, a new message popped up in the air. You've arrived in the coordinate, Oz 1900. Along with the loud screech, the vehicle came to stop in midair. The place we arrived in was actually a train station of sorts, and that station was a small wooden house. I shouted out, everyone get out quickly and enter that house. Almost at the same time as everyone filed into this house, the X-grade Ferragini, exploded into bits. God admit, I hadn't even driven it that many times, too. I confirmed that everyone was inside and closed the front door shut. Right after that, a powerful tornado was stirred up around the wooden house. The structure rose up in the air before moving at a breakneck pace. I shouted again, "Shut the windows and lock them." You think closing the windows will actually help? Han Soo-young threw out a tackle, but she still diligently closed the windows. I spotted the mystery nebula reloading their weapons in the far-off distance. It was indeed an impressive spectacle to witness dozens upon dozens of battleships charging their photon cannons at once. An attack of that magnitude could probably blow up the Korean peninsula in one go. Yi Jae-hai urgently shouted out, "Audiobook, even if it's now. Don't worry, we're safe here." Suddenly, the entire house went through a geometric transformation. Its interior expanded rapidly, and accompanied by loud metallic noises, steel pipes suddenly began growing throughout the house. What the heck, wasn't this a wooden house? Docking procedure will now commence. The house floating in the air was secured to something as the loud docking noises resounded out, and at the same time, the burst of gunfire rained down on us. The firepower on display here was enough to blow away a continent to oblivion. But then, an unimaginably humongous steel barrier suddenly grew around the entirety of the planet as noisy exhaust sounds resounded out. Streams of gunfire flying in crashed into that barrier and were extinguished without a trace. My companions carried this rather scared silly look on their faces from the sheer scale of the barrier as they all turned to look at me. The exterior of the planet we arrived at could be seen through the windows. It was a city glimmering in a silvery hue, the giant planet that reminded one of a contracting heart. Welcome to the Heart of Steel, Oz. The Heart of Steel, Oz. This was the planet where the strongest metal found in the star stream grew. Episode 87, The Heart of Steel 1 Fin. Chapter 460, The Heart of Steel 2. The ship's hull will now enter the stabilization process. Please be on standby. While listening to the system messages, my companions dazedly looked out of the windows. The house that got swept away by a tornado and entering a brand new world. Surely, some of them should have realized what exactly was going on here. I just see this is that right, that Wizard of Oz. Rather unexpectedly, the one to ask me first was Yi Jae-hai. You heard about it. NG, an old friend of mine used to love a musical related to it. Yi Jae-hai was bragging a bit, but then her expression suddenly became gloomy. Jiang Huiwan noticed that and quickly took over from there. By the way, isn't The Wizard of Oz a relatively modern literary work? If I remember correctly, it was created in the year 1900, I believe, said Yu Sangha. As expected of Sangha Iani, you really do know everything. Yi Jae-hai raised her thumb up. Jiang Huiwan carried on. But that doesn't make sense, does it? This world is only around 100 years old, but I heard from Hyunseong SSI that the Master of Steel is a far older constellation than that. You're correct, Huiwan SSI. She was asking a valid question. All fables would go on to construct existences sooner or later. Yet the age of the fable in question that could have constructed an existence was too short, so it was only natural that questions would be raised. What do you think about the journey to the West? Pardon? Do you believe that the journey came about first, or the great sage was around way before that? That brought about the moment of realization to my companions. Does that mean the Master of Steel existed before that story? It might or might not. What the heck? It was as I said. The ages of those beings that became fables would gradually get harder to distinguish as time went on. A constellation would start from a source fable, but even such a fable would minutely change as time elapsed. The ship stabilization process has concluded. Exit will now open. Well, we'll find out once we get there, said Han Soo-young, as she lightly leaped out first. Yi Jae-hai and the two kids, looking clearly excited, quickly followed after her. "Let's get going as well," said I. The remaining companions nodded their heads and exited from this ship. If my memory was correct, the scenario of Oz mirrored the original novel's adventure. The house flown away by the tornado would arrive in another world called Oz, and the unfortunate one that gets squashed flat would be the Wicked Witch. What the hell is this? And that's when I heard Yijai's yell. Yup, she must have discovered the witch below the house then. However, hey, it's a fake. Something was indeed crushed under the house. However, it wasn't an actual witch, but a doll mocked up to look like one. Its state was so filthy and neglected that it would be hard to argue this thing was once a witch. Han Soo-young picked up the broken leg of the mannequin and asked me, "What is this?" I quietly studied the leg. The progression has changed from the original. The planet Oz from the Ways of Survival was a type of theme park. The visitors would follow the route of the original Wizard of Oz, which went along the lines of encounter the Munchkins first, then after receiving different roles to play, travel towards the Emerald Castle. However, something was wrong here. The dwarves, Munchkins, are nowhere to be found. Yu Young-hyuk muttered quietly, "It's somewhat different from what my master told me." I agreed with him. What was up with this view? The Silver City with bleak winds blowing through it was showing almost no sign of life. Something feels really dreary. Isn't this world supposed to be a fairy tale? Even I, a man who read The Ways of Survival inside out, didn't possess a whole lot of info related to Oz. It was introduced properly only once during the original novel, during Yu Young-hyuk's 999th regression turn. In the latter half of The Ways of Survival, the scene skips happened far more frequently, and stuff related to Oz got relegated to simple lines such as, "They went to Oz to get fable metal that could strengthen their weapons." It's a sad place, isn't it? It'd have been nicer for a happier story to permeate in this place. Yi Hyun-seong from the 999th turn said that. It still remained vividly in my head even now. This was where he awakened his powers and ended up inheriting the status and the will of the Master of Steel. But no matter how hard I looked, our current view was completely different from the original novel. Why? Was it because we changed a lot of the original storyline? This was none other than Oz. It was not one of the planets strongly influenced by the changes Kim Dakya Company caused. Shouldn't those fairy-like creatures gather around us to sing and dance while taking us somewhere? Forget about fairies, I can't even see a single fly, said Han Soo-young. The theme park's broken notice board was found discarded on the ground. It was as if we were looking at a closed-down amusement park. Still, the kids seemed to be really excited regardless. They stuck close to my sides and began muttering away. It's almost like a haunted house. We decided to follow the yellow road marked on the ground for the time being. According to the original, the Emerald Castle should be waiting for us at the end of this road. And sure enough, we did spot a tall green tower after walking for a bit, and a small city was built around that tower. An aged castle has been constructed at the place where all journeys come to an end, so we wish for you to willingly pay us a visit and remember our story. Somewhat poignant words were written on the entrance to the city. It was around then that Yu Young-hyuk suddenly spoke up. I shall act on my own from here. What, why? There is an excellent blacksmith living among the dwarves in this place. I recalled a certain sentence after hearing him. The Oz's metal is permeated with the most ancient type of magic, so. Indeed, Oz was the place of origin for the metal permeated with the oldest fable in the star stream. Even Yu Young-hyuk's weapon from the original was reinforced with the steel from this place. The greatest supreme sword, reborn as the star relic after the Oz's metal and Yu Young-hyuk's fable were intertwined. That was the star relic he used in the latter half of the novel, Heaven-Shaking Sword. Of course, that was the story from the original, and the one to get reinforced this time around would be the dark heavenly demon sword. But still, Oz's steel is the strongest in the star stream. Securing suitable weapons is an utmost priority. After declaring such, Yu Yonghyuk didn't even wait for our permission and simply went on his way. Companions looked at me, silently asking if this was okay, and I replied with a simple shrug of my shoulders. Since I had multiple reasons for coming to Oz anyway, there was a need to split the group here. Also, the whole group wasn't really necessary to save Yi Hyun-seong. I spoke to Yi Jai-hai and her brilliantly sparkling eyes. You should go after him, too. Don't you want to upgrade your battleship? Hell yes. The clearly happy Yi Jai-hai quickly trotted away. Next up, I looked at Yu Sang-ah. Yu Sang-ah SSI, can you tail them for the time being? I'm kind of worried about sending those two alone. And also, the kids. I'm sure there are lots of things to sightsee around here. Let's go, please hurry. The children held onto both hands of Yu Sang-ah, and they soon disappeared towards the high street. Now that the noisy group had been split up like this, I felt a bit hollow for some reason. The remaining people were Jiang Huiwan, Han Soo-young, and me. Han Soo-young muttered out. So, only Dorothy, the smart scarecrow, and the cowardly lion remain. There were 4 members in the Wizard of Oz's main group. They were the protagonists Dorothy, Tin Woodman, the Scarecrow, and the Cowardly Lion. I spoke up. Since you went ahead and said the smart Scarecrow, I'm guessing that's you. Bingo. I won't ask you about the other 2. You're the Cowardly Lion, obviously. Thanks. While chatting and giggling away, we entered the center of the city. If this place remained as a theme park, such a composition could have been rather fun. Jiang Huiwan shook her head while looking at us and strode forward without hesitation. A handful of monkeys hidden in the nooks and crannies of the city were glancing at us. It certainly didn't feel like a welcoming atmosphere. This world didn't welcome us or even bother to greet us. Forget about a fairy tale, the overall vibe suited a horror novel far better. Not too long afterwards, we arrived before the Emerald Tower. Han Soo-young was the first to speak up. It looks like a magic tower. Well, an actual wizard is living here, so. Although I couldn't be sure if he was still alive even now. We approached the entrance and knocked on the door, only to be greeted by a stiff, curt voice of a man. State your business. We seek an audience with the Master of Steel. No reply came back. The door remained resolutely shut. It seemed that I made a slip of tongue somewhere. I quickly recalled the ways of survival. What did they say in the 999th turn again? While I remained engrossed in my thoughts, Jiang Huiwan suddenly unsheathed her sword and spoke up. Return Hyunseong SC's soul before I split this damn tower in half. The status of an archangel exploded out from her entire figure. And just as the intense flames of hellfire started burning on the steel sword's blade, the door hesitantly opened up. The Emerald Castle is welcoming all of you. I wondered if this was fine, but since we didn't have a lot of time, I figured might as well. Han Soo-young had found an ideal opportunity here, so she muttered in an impressed voice, as expected of our Dorothy. Shut up, I didn't come here to fool around. Han Soo-young sneaked closer to my side and whispered through the midday tryst. Super scary, is that the power of love? Jiang Huiwan was marching forward while her steel sword drew arcs in the air. She was originally a spirited person, to begin with, but seeing her like this, I couldn't help but admit that her current aura was indeed astonishing. I guess so. The interior of the tower was rather plain and boring. There weren't any eye-catching decorations to speak of, and only the most necessary items were placed here and there. It was like the inside of Yi Hyun-seong's military backpack. We walked for another 5 minutes or so before a room resembling an audience chamber made its appearance. We opened its doors and entered immediately. Colorful spotlights came to life, and a giant, silver-colored mask floated up in the middle of the chamber. A pair of hollow eyes were now looking at us. The Kim Dokya Company, is it? The Steel's true voice reverberated within the audience chamber. I immediately realized that this guy was the Master of Steel, the Fable-grade constellation, and Yi Hyun-seong's backer. This mask was probably a symbolic item. That's correct. Pleasure to make your acquaintance. I'm guessing that you're the Demon King of Salvation. I nodded my head. The silver mask looked at me as if this whole thing was rather annoying. What is the purpose of your visit here? Going straight to the topic, is it? I thought that this was for the better. Please return Hyungseong's soul to us. We know that you have the ownership over it. That's impossible. Why not? His soul is required to maintain this planet. That was completely unexpected. I glanced to my side, only to discover Jiang Hui-1 glaring daggers in my direction. I quickly followed up. I'm well aware that sponsorship contracts are usually like this, but regardless of what, Hyunseong SSI is our comrade. I was under the impression that you liked our story so far. Besides, does Oz possess more than enough great fables? Surely, there isn't a reason to use Hyunseong SC's soul as the power source. The fable of Wizard of Oz was famous enough to be well known back on Earth, too. Sure, the fame had cooled down a little in recent times, but this story managed to generate a shocking level of popularity throughout the planet once upon a time. It was that famous on Earth, so how popular would it have been in the star stream? So, the lack of a power source simply didn't make any sense at all. Even then, the Master of Steel remained resolutely stubborn. Go back, I can't return his soul. Episode 87, The Heart of Steel 2 Finn.